What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 5DW Chapter 63 Roger's knife is in Kizaru's hand. Summit War begins. Xia En, who was followed by the 7 blood shadows, put his hands in his pockets and walked towards the fortress while responding to the marines who greeted him around. Under the seemingly peaceful expression, it was a little less lively than before. Because at this time Xia En was full of doubts. When I went out this time, I clearly occupied more than 10 pieces of territory from the 4 emperors, and they all planted the banner of their own infinite guild. Everyone returned to Marineford and didn't prompt. How could they still not be able to complete the task? Xia En was puzzled. At this time, the voice of the yellow ape came from the front. Hey, brother, what are you thinking? Xia En looked up and saw that the person in the corridor was his brother. No, maybe I'm a little tired. Xia En let out a haha and walked into the office to. After sitting down, Xia En froze, but Kizaru smiled and said, I usually don't see you thinking, is the duster given to you too heavy? However, it is normal for you to feel pressure to launch such a big war this time, and the main core of this war is you. Me? Xia En looked over suspiciously. Sengoku and the meeting didn't mention anything about fighting with oneself as the core. When people come, don't they just fight directly? The situation has changed. Now I have received news that the Whitebeard pirates have united with other forces. I am afraid that it will become very large, so we cannot use the previously discussed tactics. I will talk to you about this later. Kizaru leaned on the sofa, his expression became a little dignified. Other forces? That is, those people with red hair and beasts? Or the Revolutionary Army? After thinking about it, Xia En knew what kind of forces there were, and there was no big surprise. That's right, so this time Mr. Sengoku discussed with Mrs. Crane and decided to use you as the core of the battle this time, so that their so-called coalition forces will never return in one fell swoop. Kizaru was very proud when he said it, not to mention anything else, just Xia En's position in Marine at this time far surpassed the 3 of them, Admiral. Controlling the world situation has given Marine greater prestige and strength than before, and he is also honored as Xia En's older brother. Xia En is not surprised at this point, originally thought that Sengoku would put himself in an important position, but upgraded to the core of combat. However, in the face of a much larger summit war, Xia En 510 knew that this time the fight would not be as simple as just 2 or 3 parties. Although already very strong, this time to compete for territory and complete system tasks is precisely to further enhance Bloodshadow's strength and ensure that nothing will. Kizaru was still talking. At this time, Xia En also took the opportunity to interject and asked, Brother, I don't know what will happen to these corpses after execution. For example, Roger. And the rocks, where will their remains be? Hearing this, Kizaru-san even smiled and said, Your question is really tricky. You don't care about the battle in the next day, but think about it. Kizaru didn't think too much about children, who are naturally jumpy. Then he shook his head and said, I don't know where Rock's bones are. They should have been disposed of by celestial dragons. As for Roger's, it's even more mysterious. In short, normal burial is impossible. We were also curious about it back then. Strong people like Rox and Roger, the blood factor is of great scientific value alone, and their partners have also dispersed, so it is naturally impossible for them to be buried safely after. But who knows what the world government will do with it? That's it. Seeing Kizaru's confused look, Xia En was immediately disappointed. It would be great if the bodies of the 2 of them could be found. But Kizaru seemed to still be recalling it, and finally said, Oh, by the way, Roger's famous sword is still stored in the science. After all, it is a supremely sharp sword. It has not been used by Roger even after being used for so long. Haki forged the black sword, saying it was for. Kizaru usually talks so much, but he only does so in front of. Moreover, Xia En is still the 4th admiral, and her authority in Marine is the same as theirs, so naturally there is nothing she cannot say. Roger's knife? Ace? Xia En immediately became energetic and was pleasantly surprised. Hey, you know that knife is called Ace. Kizaru smiled, then looked at Xia En suspiciously and said, Something's wrong. What's your plan? Are you so interested in Roger and Rox? The 2 brothers have a personality that is not up to standard when they are idle. At this time, they kept asking questions. Of course, Kizaru was not stupid. He smiled and asked what the purpose was. Ahaha, I'm just curious. Besides, that knife is the ultimate sharp knife. There are only 12 of them in the world. Xia En laughed and gave a reason. The war is about to begin. You'd better not think about these things. You are the core of the battle. The enemy's target will definitely be focused on you. Kizaru did not continue to investigate, but reminded Xia En. Yes, but I'm hiding in the rear. If there's anything wrong, I'll just run away to find the 5 elders. I'll see what those powerful people do, hee. Xia En joked, and then asked, I don't know how these forces were established. Brother, you said like pirates, how did the underground forces become independent and recognized? Rushing to talk, Xia En took the opportunity to continue asking about the conditions for establishing a force. Well, it needs to be well known. Just like those pirate groups, the captain also has a clear identity. Moreover, there must be people under his command, otherwise how can it be said to be a force? This territory is just an extension of the power of a group. I said, Have you reached such an age of seeking knowledge? Kizaru had already picked up the teacup and heard Xia En's question. But as he spoke, he looked straight at Xia En. Xia En was suddenly enlightened as she listened, silently keeping these words in mind, but when she looked up, she saw Kizaru's suspicious look.
Brother, why do you look at me like that? I'll just ask.
I usually don't bother to listen to you, but are you so curious today? I tell you not to be clever. If you create a force on your own, in short, there are celestial dragons up there, as well as allied countries around. I'm watching, you kid, think less, brother, I don't want to lose my security at the end of the. Kizaru rolled his eyes helplessly and said. Of course, he didn't think that Xia En would really go back to work. After all, it was so comfortable now, he didn't have to worry about a lot and got a generous salary. Brother, with your attitude of trying to fish, there's no such thing as a late night. You brat, let's see if I don't pinch your face. Why do you let the blood shadow block me? Xia En and Kizaru are in the office, and the young and old brothers are enjoying themselves happily. But this time it was between the powers of Marijo. The 5 elders were sitting on the sofa, seemingly waiting for someone. Not long after, Geiringer, with crescent hair and a solemn face, strode in. The 5 elders did not speak at first, but frowned a little after seeing Geiringer's expression. After randomly being screened out, Geiringer said in a serious tone, the person who killed Saint Roswald Charlos was most likely Xia En. In an instant, the 5 elders frowned even more and their eyes became. It turned out that Geiringer had been investigating. Today, we suddenly have to talk in detail and the assassination of celestial dragons by the people below is not a trivial matter. If it is really determined to be Xia En, even his penultimate talent will have to bear the wrath of the Lord of the World. But after all, Xia En is now too important to the world government and marine. Saint Satan, who was most optimistic about Xia En, directly asked, what exactly did you find? So Geiringer began to slowly describe his findings. On the day Charos was killed, Xia En was visiting the Sabodi archipelago. During the CPO investigation, ACAE, it was discovered that Xia En had a conflict with Charos in Area 21, and Charos fired a shot at him, which was blocked by the blood shadow. But this is not a coincidence. Based on this discovery, I questioned the guards around Charles one by one. One of them saw the cloak before he fell unconscious. That's right.
It's the cloak of Ariang Dazan. As Geilinger spoke, he began to grit his teeth. He always valued the majesty of the celestial dragons more than anything else, and Xia En even dared to kill the celestial dragons directly without interrogating him afterwards.
The 5 elders suddenly became ugly, and they couldn't believe that Xia En was responsible for this. Saint Satan asked again, are you sure the guard saw it correctly? Such talents are very important. If he is not 100% sure, Saint Satan really doesn't want to accept. He really couldn't remember it at first, but I came. Geiringer smiled solemnly and said with knowledgeable assistance and other means, any guard will be reminded of what happened at that time. Then Xia En's suspicion cannot be eliminated. I know what you think, but the majesty of the descendants of God must not be lost. The legal martial god, Saint Wechuli looked at Saint Satan and said something that left him speechless. Satan Shang would not continue to speak for Xia En on this issue, and nodded slightly. I can't believe that it was actually Xia En who did it. Marca's saint, the god of environmental martial arts, was puzzled. I can't figure out why he wanted to kill the celestial dragons. Yes, he could have become the most brilliant hero under celestial dragons. The remaining 5 elders also said with gloomy expressions. Now the war is imminent, but I still want to propose that Xia En pay the price. The descendants of God dared to take action. This person has no fear of God and no respect. This will make the majesty of celestial dragons disappear. When Geiringer saw that the 5 elders had changed their attitude towards Xia En, he immediately spoke. Of course, the majesty of God cannot be blasphemed. 5 elders agreed without hesitation. In their eyes, the value and strength that Xia En brings to the world government are far less important than the majesty of the celestial dragons. This is why for 800 years, there have been countless strong men, but the celestial dragons are still at the top. Of course, Xia En didn't know at this moment that Marijoy only had ill will towards him after this conversation. The day of the public execution came. In the eyes of countless people with complicated expectations, the live broadcast of the public execution was finally ushered. Huge screens light up on landmark islands around the world, broadcasting live coverage of naval headquarters. I'm going. 100,000 elite Marines. They're really lined up in Marine Force. Marines from all over the world, most of them are famous generals. What a powerful force. Look, Vice Admiral, all the adults are here. That's the Flying Squirrel Vice Admiral, the Huashaoshan Vice Admiral. Countless people looked at the white figure on the scene, who was hit hard at the beginning, and couldn't stop marching. The people of the Alliance were really happy. After all, it was their first time to see such a large force of Marine, and they saw how powerful it was. Then, the camera zoomed out and focused on a wider area from the square. Immediately, countless people looking at the screen noticed the figure standing on the harbor defense.
The great villain of the sea. He accepted the recruitment order from the world government and became the great pirate of Shichibukai. That's Heavenly Yaksha Doflamingo. Oh my god, Gecko Moria. Tyrant Bear.
The world's best swordsman, Hawkeye, called the most beautiful woman. The Pirate Empress, Boa Hancock, so beautiful. Shichibukai is also being recruited, and its reputation as one of the three major forces has caused people on the big islands such as Sabo de Land and the 7 capitals of water to exclaim. Just seeing this place is enough to frighten many people about Marine's arrangement. The image bug seemed to notice something at this time, and began to see the camera shift, aiming at the platform in the middle of the execution platform. There are 4 luxurious chairs with gold edges and purple leather neatly placed.
The Marines in the square also felt something at this moment. They swallowed their throats and looked up at the platform in the middle of the execution platform.
Are those 4 chairs Admiral's positions? It must be the case. Vice Admiral has already arranged the formation there. This must belong to Admiral, but why are there 4 chairs? Audiences everywhere are still a little confused. But Marine, who was in charge of the live broadcast, made a sound for everyone to hear. The 4 admirals are coming out. In the camera screen, following Marine's voice, 4 figures were seen slowly walking up to the middle of the execution platform. Akainu Sakazuki, Aokiji Kuzan, Kizaru Perusalino and Shaen. This sense of oppression. The admirals are... In the square, many Marines from all over the world had never seen an admiral with their own eyes, let alone the admirals who were in full force at a public execution site. They were suddenly shocked. At the same time, it also brought them a great sense of admiration. There are millions of Marines, but only a few The scene suddenly burst into cheers. The audience also knew the 3 admirals Akainu, Kizaru, and Aokiji, and watched them fall into their seats. But when Xia En also sat in the 4th position, everyone's eyes changed. Everyone knows that he is Kizaru's younger brother, Marine's most powerful future star, and he is very powerful, but he is the same as Admiral. At this time, Marine, who was in charge of the camera, also said with envy and admiration, Marine's 4th Admiral, Xia En, is as powerful as the previous 3. Chapter 64. The world is in an uproar. 8-year-old 4th Admiral. Blood Shadow. The double royals appeared together. Why? All the spectators watching the live broadcast were surprised and stunned for a while. 4th Admiral. Marine is traditionally 3, so Xia En actually became the 4th. He's 8 years old. 8 years old. That's Admiral. No wonder Marine's voice is so envious and admired. This man is simply the prodigy child among prodigies. Not only is his record amazing, but his current status is also scary enough. But becoming an admiral, considering Xia En's current shocking record, doesn't seem very strained. That's when the figure reappeared on the... As soon as Xia En arrived and sat down, all the cloaked figures without covering their faces The blood-red face caused everyone who saw it to change their faces, and sweat appeared on their forehead. Especially the Marine fighters at the scene swallowed their throats and became Master Xia En. Blood Shadow Admiral. It took several seconds for the square to burst into louder cheers. With Xia En's fame, almost most of the Marines are his fans, and one can even hear Xia En's name being cheered non-stop from the audience. The Marines have known it for a long time, but there are many people in the audience who don't know what the Blood Shadow is, but they are very surprised to see the enthusiastic performance of the Marines. It wasn't until the existence of Blood Shadow was narrated again by Marine who was in charge of the live broadcast that everyone fully understood. This is Xia En Admiral's Blood Shadow ability, a 100% reproduction of Blood's own strength, and a puppet product with absolute combat awareness. This aura is really amazing. I feel like my heart is about to stop. That is the Blood Shadow of Momousagi Vice Admiral, that is the Blood Shadow of Marshal Sengoku, Vice Admiral Garp, and our 3 admirals. The last one is the Blood Shadow of the legendary pirate, Golden Lion. The cheers in the square continued, and the voice of Blood Shadow Admiral became the mainstream, resounding in the ears of all the audience in front of the live broadcast. Their eyes trembled, their foreheads were sweating, and they were greatly shocked by the understanding after the appearance of the Blood Shadow. It turns out that this is Xia En's ability. No wonder Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom, and Golden Lion himself all suffer. This Blood Shadow ability is too outrageous. He alone is equivalent to having the entire combat power of the top. Every Blood Shadow makes people all over the world. What kind of heaven-defying ability can actually reproduce such a perfect strength? This is simply the strongest ability. And these, the Shichibukai who just heard it couldn't help being shocked. So those record after record are all because of his outrageous ability. For example, Hancock, if it wasn't for Marine's talkativeness, she would not know that Xia En has so many shadows of powerful characters. Unbelievable. Could it be my superior fruit? It's too scary. That's right, it's outrageous. Gecko Moria's saliva is almost dripping down. Compared with his shadow fruit, Xia En's blood shadow is so unsolvable and pervert. 3 Admiral blood shadows, Sengoku, Garp, Golden Lion blood shadows. Just looking at them makes people shudder. It's because of him that Marine declared war without...
Hawkeye couldn't help but look sideways. The strength of Xia En's blood shadow alone was enough to establish a huge advantage in this battle.
But among the Shichibukai, the only one with a very unhappy face and slowly bulging veins was Mingo. Speaking of which, he was the first big pirate to be beaten by Xia En's blood shadow. Immediately, the cheers of the audience and the shock outside the venue became quiet until the sound of escorting the prisoner to the execution platform. Everyone knows that the reason why Marine is so big, and even Xia En's trump card is directly revealed, is because of the 3 people who will be executed today. Da 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 da. At this moment, Rayleigh, who looked a bit complicated, Luffy, who was looking around and observing, and Ace, who looked heavy and unwilling, walked onto the execution platform in shackles. Marshal Sengoku arrived wearing a straight military uniform and a seagull-peaked cap. The audience's attention also shifted to the execution platform. People from all over the world, major forces and even everyone present had mixed eyes. Some were indifferent, some were expecting, some were... Sengoku took the speakerphone and began to speak. Everyone, the public execution site has been prepared. The 3 people executed here today are of great significance to Marine and the world.
He, Silver, Rayleigh, the right arm of the Pirate King, the former vice captain, we have been looking for him for decades, and he was finally sent here today. Some words cannot be said, and Sengoku's introduction to Rayleigh was very brief. Because Rayleigh doesn't need too much introduction, people all over the world know it. Sure enough, people from all over the world were in an uproar after seeing Rayleigh in person. One Piece's crew should have all been executed. I only caught him now, but Marine is so good. He hasn't given up for decades. After all, this is the vice captain of the world's largest pirate group.
The world has different views on the Roger pirates, some are happy and some are sad. Later, in the live broadcast, Sengoku continued to point out the guilt of the execution, saying, "This is Straw Hat Luffy, a new pirate with a bounty of over 100 million. And he is also the biological son of the leader of the Revolutionary Army, D. Luffy." In an instant, there was another wave of exclamations and surprises. No wonder, Straw Hat, a new pirate who has made over 100 million yuan, would become one of today's executioners. Just the reputation of being the son of the leader of the Revolutionary Army frightens and shocks countless. Because another title for the leader of the Revolutionary Army is the most vicious criminal. Rayleigh, Luffy has taken the world by storm. After arriving at Fire Fist Ace, Sengoku asked him to name his father. "My dad is Whitebeard." "No, tell me your biological father." "I don't have a biological father, my current father is Whitebeard." "If you don't tell me, then I will tell you. Porgas D. Ace, your biological father is One Piece, Gold D. Roger." Finally, Ace's identity was announced. This announcement directly shocked the world that was still shocked by the first 2 people, and immediately exploded. The son of Roger the Pirate King, the vice captain, and the son of the leader of the Revolutionary Army, Marine's execution this time is simply... Even Rayleigh, who was going to die peacefully, suddenly turned his head with disbelief in his eyes. He had never known Ace's true background, but he just felt a little familiar and just regarded him as someone who went to death together. But at this moment that shocked the whole world. Suddenly, a large number of bubbles began to appear on the surface of the inner bay of the port. Coming. Shaw En's eyes narrowed, knowing that this was the diving invasion of the Whitebeard pirates. And because of the butterfly effect that occurred with his own arrival, Whitebeard arrived faster. Even at this time, the whole world was still in shock about the identities and backgrounds of Rayleigh, Luffy, and Ace, and the sudden movement surprised. The bubbles coming out of Gulu Gulu became more and more dense, until a huge ship jumped out of the sea, and all the Marines were shocked. That's the Whitebeard pirates, Moby Dick, they did come. The audience watching the live broadcast even 3 auxiliary ships and 1 main ship jumped out from the bottom of the sea one after another. The pirate flag and the iconic Moby Dick shocked the world in an instant. "I'm coming." The appearance of the Whitebeard pirates also indicates that this battle will eventually begin. At first, everyone was still speculating whether the Whitebeard pirates would come, but after they appeared, countless people couldn't help but feel scared. War is cruel, and this is a man with the power to destroy the world. The world. What will it become in the end? Terror among civilians is spreading. But the major forces looked excited. It started, Whitebeard is really here, ha 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 ha, fight, fight. At the scene, the turbulent sea surface in the inner bay gradually On the deck of the Moby Dick, captains such as Marco, Beasta, and Josie lined up in front, looking solemnly at the Marine lineup. Following the trembling eyes of the audience, Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world, walked onto the deck holding a Kong Yunchi. The invincible gaze looked directly at the execution platform and laughed. "Gu la la la, Sengoku, I haven't seen you for decades, have you taken good care of my dear son?" Whitebeard is the king of the era, a being who stands at the pinnacle. With one sentence, all the Marines in the room couldn't help but swallow their throats and feel nervous. Whitebeard, the age of pirates is over. Today, neither Rayleigh nor Roger, nor the son of the dragon, nor you can leave. Sengoku was still serious when facing Whitebeard, but his tone was sharp. He made no secret of his purpose. "Today, I'm just waiting for you to come. Zero ask for flowers." It seems that the appearance of Xia En, the Blood Shadow, has given you Marine confidence, Sengoku. Whitebeard sneered. Everyone knows exactly what forces are prepared to fight this war. Sengoku knows that Whitebeard and the others have joined forces, and Whitebeard also knows that Marine has the 7 blood shadows of Xia En. It can also be said that this is not just a battle to save people, but a historic decisive battle between pirates and Marine. The conversation between the 2 leaders immediately filled the room with a strong smell of gunpowder. At this moment, a communication soldier suddenly ran up behind Sengoku, looking anxious. "Report. Marshal Sengoku, the Whitebeard pirates' large fleet and Red Hair pirates were discovered in the outer bay. One directly invades the inner bay, and the other enters from the outer bay. Do you want to directly open the Marine's defense line? After Sengoku heard this, his expression became more solemn. Facing an opponent like Whitebeard, no matter what the operation is, it is worth pondering. The Marine soldiers below held their breath and became even more nervous. Although the Whitebeard pirates had already been informed that the attack was more than just one force, when they heard that the Red Hair pirates were also coming, everyone was still frightened. After all, these are two sea emperors, and the whole group is attacking. At this time, people all over the world watching the live broadcast were. Many people even broke into cold sweat and looked at the picture with trembling eyes. Because at this moment, you can see that on the sea in the distance, densely packed large ships appear. The 43rd Fleet under the Whitebeard pirates. All the famous captains of the New World have arrived. A war of this level, my god. The battle was so big that many people lost their. But at the end, the clear flag of the Red Hair pirates appeared, which caused an uproar among people all over the world. Red Hair. It's Red Hair. The big red-haired fleet is here too. Where's the Red Force? 2 emperors of the sea joined forces. Marine's lineup is also unprecedentedly powerful. This is the largest war in modern time. Crazy. People around the world have never known a battle of this magnitude in their entire lives. Moreover, the Red Hair pirates' large fleet appeared together with the Whitebeard pirates' large fleet, so there is no doubt that the red-haired Shanks will also appear somewhere. At this time, the whole world is in an uproar. Next to Moby Dick, a large number of bubbles popped up again. Red Force also jumped out from the bottom of the. Whitebeard and Redhead joined forces. No, how is that possible? The 4 emperors have joined forces. In terms of numbers and momentum, they are not inferior to Marine. What is going on in this war? Why is the Red Hair coming too? I am afraid. Originally, the appearance of Whitebeard had already frightened the people who were afraid of prestige, and the Red Hair made it even more. Because maybe, the world tomorrow really won't exist. But at this moment, Kaido, Big Mom and other forces who were afraid of the world being in chaos were all overjoyed and wished for more chaos. And in the field, Mihawk's eyes changed, and his brows raised. He didn't know that the Red Hair would also come, and he was suddenly a little confused. Doflamingo, on the other hand, laughed softly. Empress Hancock and Gecko Moria's expressions changed dramatically, and they said seriously, the Emperor of the Sea is joining forces, or the red-haired Whitebeard. Marine wants to annihilate them all in one fell swoop? Red Hair. The eyes of Garp, Sengoku, Granny He and others were solemn. The 4 emperors that Marine fears most appeared together. What we have to do today is to completely defeat the future ones. Cheer up. We have 4 admirals, we also have top experts. Marine elites from all over the world, inspired by vice admirals, took hold of their weapons. Shanks, Ben Beckman, Usopp, Gabu and other cadres stood at the bow of the ship, looking directly at the execution platform. Kutaro, Rayleigh, who was handcuffed, was stunned for a moment, then lowered his head. He actually didn't think about continuing to live, but Shanks still ran over to save him. Luffy, who was holding his head together, saw Shanks, whom he hadn't seen for 10 years, and burst into tears. He didn't know whether to be happy or sad, and shouted, Shanks. Luffy, Mr. Rayleigh, here I come. Shanks put his one arm on Griffin's famous sword and pulled it out. Then he shouted, Marine, end this farce. Once this war starts, it will be out of control. Chapter 65 Xia En. Don't make any moves, let my people come to the top. Red Hair. I didn't expect you to participate, but today, no one can interfere with the public execution. Sengoku's face sank, and he expressed his attitude without hesitation. Below, led by the Marine Vice Admirals, their morale and fighting spirit began to improve. Seeing this, Whitebeard put Kong Yunki to the people around him, stepped on the bow of the boat himself, and said, Don't talk nonsense. Ace, Rayleigh and that kid, hold on a minute. Grinning, Whitebeard bent over and crossed his arms, ready. Seeing this pose, Garp and Sengoku's eyes changed dramatically. He's about to make a move. Xia En also saw it clearly on the platform in the middle, and knew that this was Whitebeard's move, causing a tsunami. As expected. Blast out to the left and Whitebeard still had his unique smile, but in front of his fists, the air on both sides was instantly shaken out of the cracks visible to the. In an instant, the cracks that spread like spider webs were accompanied by the sound of an atmospheric explosion. What's the situation with that pose? The atmosphere exploded. No, be careful, that's Whitebeard's shock fruit calendar. In the Marine lineup, the Marine soldiers were shocked. Things are starting to go wrong. Earthquakes, shaking the sea from Whitebeard's feet until the tremors are felt visibly throughout the island. The sea level is dropping even more, and a series of abnormalities have shocked everyone. However, Whitebeard has always maintained this posture, and the audience watching the live broadcast did not feel any change at first, only the camera shakes. Until the terrifying tsunami that covered the sky and the sun struck from the left and right sides. After the light that covered Marineford dimmed, the Marines were even more frightened when they saw the ones. This is the power to destroy the world, shock fruit ability. The visual effect is very impactful. A tsunami with a height of 100 meters struck from the left and right sides, enough to completely wash away the entire Marineford. Regardless of whether they are capable or not, they will be taken away by this powerful wave. Such a terrifying scene made the eyes of the elite Marines on the square and people from all over the world watching the live broadcast pop out. Really see the terrifying power of Whitebeard, but although the moves are powerful, they are fine against ordinary opponents. Marines' senior management are extremely dignified, but they are not panicked. Well, Aokiji looked up at the huge waves on both sides of the approaching Marineford, and was about to make a shot. Mr. Aokiji, let the Blood Shadow go, we still need to guard the execution platform. Xia En had expected this kind of scene long ago, so she was very indifferent at the moment, and directly forced Aokiji to take the shot. Afterwards, the blood shadow of Aokiji behind him disappeared in place as if teleporting. The figure quickly soared into the air, appearing in the eyes of everyone. It's Xia En's blood shadow, Whitebeard. The pirates on both sides of the red hair are still very excited, especially with such a terrifying tsunami. What will Marine do next? Unexpectedly, Shuiying was the first to strike so soon, so everyone's eyes froze. After the blood shadow of Aokiji jumped up, his arms spread out, and the two streams of icy air froze the air along the way into frost. It looks like two icicles rushed towards the huge waves on both sides, and the moment they touched the sea. Click rapid freezing. In the shocking eyes of everyone, the rolling huge waves were quickly frozen, rendered into a day to freeze it. Ice Age. Aokiji, who was sitting next to Xia En, smiled slightly. It was exactly the move I wanted to use just now. Only in this way can tsunamis be prevented from hitting the island faster than other methods. Seeing the raging waves being frozen into a huge ice wall in the blink of an eye, the Marine soldiers cheered. Blood Shadow Admiral! Blood Shadow Admiral! It was such a shocking scene when the Blood Shadow took action, which made the soldiers admire Xia En even more.
Before, everyone was really frightened by this kind of natural disaster attack. Audiences watching the live broadcast from all over the world were even more amazed. It was Xia En who took action. That's right, Aokiji Admiral's Blood Shadow is a Blood Shadow. It's amazing. Blood Shadow's strength is really not inferior to that of Admiral, it's a perfect replica. People were amazed, they were more intuitive about the strength of Blood Shadow, and they also understood more clearly how pervert Xia En's Blood Shadow ability was. At the scene, seeing the Blood Shadow take the lead, the people on the red-haired Shanks became more solemn. They had known for the first time that Xia En's 7 Blood Shadows were fighting against Kaido, and Big Mom's alliance was also their main enemy this time. Whitebeard snorted coldly when he saw this. He was not too surprised that Marine was able to deal with his own tsunami, and then punched out with his backhand. The invisible and colorless shock impact struck instantly, hitting Aokiji's Blood Shadow in midair with a bang. With a click, Aokiji's Blood Shadow's body cracked open like a ball of ice and snow, falling freely into the inner bay. Taking advantage of the situation, Xia En did not hesitate to let it freeze the entire inner bay into ice, restricting the ships and creating another battlefield. But Xia En's offensive is far from over. When everyone thought that Aokiji's Blood Shadow would be injured, the Blood Shadow changed from an ice element to a blood-red figure without any interest. On the other end, a red light suddenly lit up from the sky. Bright and dazzling, Kizaru Blood Shadow takes action. Is it the 8-foot Magatama? Kizaru looked up and knew exactly what move his clone was going to unleash. The next second, dense light spots were like rain, pouring down on the Whitebeard pirates and the Red Hair pirates. Such a shocking attack frightened the two large ship groups preparing to enter Marineford harbor. Because of his red hair, Whitebeard was enveloped in it, but both of them were obviously very calm. Because at the same time, Marco spread his green flame wings and flew towards Kizaru's Blood Shadow in midair. When the 8-foot Magatama arrived, Marco transformed into the form of a phoenix. The green flames rotated, forming a circular barrier blocking the path of the 8-foot Jing Magatama. Everyone could see when they raised their eyes that the ball of light was submerged into Qingyan, which was riddled with holes, but returned to normal in the blink of an eye. And Marco can still keep getting closer to Kizaru's Blood Shadow despite the 8-foot Magatama. How can we allow you to attack our king directly? Marco's eyes were extremely sharp and he was about to reach Kizaru's Blood Shadow. But at this moment, Kizaru's Blood Shadow restrained the explosion of the 8-foot Magatama, and the light dispersed and reunited. In an instant, he had raised his leg and pointed it at the incoming Marco. Lightspeed kick. The Blood Shadow of Kizaru is not as interested in playing with Marco as Kizaru himself. With only a fighting spirit left, it attacked fiercely, kicking Marco's arm that was blocking him in surprise. There was a bang. In everyone's shocked eyes, Marco suddenly flew upside down in the firelight and hit the stone bricks of the square. The Marines suddenly, Captain Marco. Amidst the dust, worried cries rang out from the Whitebeard pirates. But soon, blue flames lingered, and then Marco, who was unscathed, walked out of it, with a dignified expression on his face. The Blood Shadow controlled by Xia En is unreasonable, Kizaru Blood Shadow's kick of light speed is full of power, and Marco's support is also very uncomfortable. At this time, the big ships coming in from Outer Bay pulled over one after another and began to rush to the ice surface. Seeing the fight between Marco and Kizaru, they immediately started to fight. Come on, brothers, let's fight Marine. Follow Dad to the death. The Eddie Spider, Lei Ching and other captains rushed up with the crew, ran and charged inside. Suddenly, There was a lot of shouting, and the Whitebeard pirates and red hair pirates immediately started to attack. Scramble into the square and save Ace. Bring back Ace and his brother. Luffy. Mr. Rayleigh. It can be seen that Foil Vista, Joe's and many captains led their team members to jump off the pirate ship. On the red hair pirates side, Usopp, Lakilu and others also led people to jump into the ice, holding weapons, aggressively launched an attack. And on the marine side. Seeing this, the vice admirals immediately stood up. So what if they join forces? We also have admiral with the highest combat power. We have the blood shadow of Xia En admiral. Destroy all these pirates. The number of marines was even larger, and a large part of the marine soldiers on the edge of the inner bay rushed out of the ice immediately to face the densely packed pirates. Smoker, these famous generals can see one after another, full of morale. Fire. Sink Moby Dick and Red Force. In an instant, the cannon fire blared. Before the two sides charged together, a gunfire had already begun to erupt. Obviously, the firepower on Marine's side is more ferocious, and when the pirates charge up, they become a little messy. Seeing the outbreak of the war, Xia En got up from the sitting position and stood on the edge of the platform to watch. The upgraded Summit War, the exchange of fire is really fierce, and there are more people on top than the original one. Marine is a bit at a disadvantage here. Xia En clearly sees the horror of the combination of the red-haired and Whitebeard ships. After all, most of these New World pirates live a bloody life, and their combat effectiveness is stronger than the elites transferred from all over the marine world. This is what caused the first wave of Marines to be at a disadvantage as soon as the two sides met. Fortunately, the number of people is more dominant, and troops can be continuously poured in from the square to replenish, and there are sky cannons on the defensive wall. Only then did they get entangled with the team led by the captains and cadres. Flying Squirrel, Huo Shaoshan and other vice admirals from naval headquarters also left the field one after another, looking for their opponents to fight. Suddenly at this time, Hawkeye Mihawk standing on the defensive wall of the inner bay is doing it. He Dao Yi pulled out from behind him, and the astonishing aura was lifted instantly. As soon as the world's #1 swordsman made a move, he immediately attracted the attention of the masters on the battlefield. Even admirals, Sengoku, Whitebeard, and the Redheads all looked over. Mihawk. Shanks frowned suddenly. However, Mihawk slashed down, and the strong sword light condensed by Haki broke through the ice surface, scraped a deep ditch and went straight to Whitebeard. Hawkeye wants to test how far the gap between himself and Whitebeard is. Xia En also saw the strength of Hawkeye's swordsmanship, and his eyes lit up. It would be great if I could get Mihawk's blood, this guy is at the same level as Redhead. At this time, the Blood Shadow team has capable people and Haki masters, but what is lacking is the world's strongest swordsman. But next, Xia En had no surprises. Eagle Eye's slash was still thrust into the sky by Diamond Josie, and the sharp sword energy exploded in the air. All the eyes of the audience were attracted by Hawkeye's slashing attack, but suddenly, Marco took advantage of this opportunity to spread his wings and fly straight to the execution platform. At this time, Whitebeard noticed Marco's independent choice of action, but Sengoku did not expect that he would be so bold. He actually wanted to steal it. Attack. In the blink of an eye, the flight distance was nearly half. The Marines and pirates in the square also looked at Marco, and their expressions changed. But the next second, Kizaru's blood shadow instantly turned into light and dispersed. When they condensed again, they were already one step ahead of Marco and were on the path to block him. This time it was no longer a light speed kick, but a large laser beam blasting past. For a moment, Marco, who had just reacted, was about to attack Kizaru Blood Shadow, and then crossed over. Unexpectedly, the Blood Shadow directly burst out the beam without even a forward movement. Marco. Beasta. Yi Zhang and others couldn't help but exclaimed. I saw Marco being hit head-on by a beam larger than him, and it shot back to the ice of the inner bay like a cannonball. Captain Marco. In the sudden burst of fire, several members of the first team hurriedly turned back to check. I'm fine. Fortunately, Marco transformed into a phoenix in time and was not damaged at all in the fire, but he only spent some energy to recover. When Chaozi saw this, he immediately became angry. He ran forward with a meteoric stride of 3.7, tilted his fist and hit the ice, causing arc-shaped cracks to spread in a circle. Then, he forcefully lifted the huge ice block and threw it towards the execution platform with his backhand. Come and try to block it. Joes yelled. Everyone was shocked by this strange power. The marine soldiers in the square were stunned by the huge ice block. On the platform in the middle of the execution platform, facing the giant ice block, Aokiji, Kizaru, and Teruden were as steady as a rock. Do we need to take action? Xia En. Akainu was wearing a peaked cap and asked Xia En without raising his head. This battle is centered around Xia En, and at the same time, Akainu Sakazuki is also looking to see if Xia En wants to continue playing. If they don't play, then they can already start to stir up the battlefield. No, Dao, you three, just sit down and take a look. Xia En grinned. At the same time, the blood shadow of Akainu stepped forward. There was a dull sound. Its arm instantly turned into magma, and an expanding magma fist extended out. Seeing this, Akainu smiled lightly. Great eruption. That's right. Xia En raised her eyes and looked at the ice cubes flying over. The next second, the blood shadow of Akainu jumped directly and rushed out, dragging his increasingly huge fist of magma and blasting it towards the big ice block. The scorching magma is so hot that the surrounding air is also distorted. There was a sudden explosion. Akainu blood shadow's magma fist directly penetrated the large ice block, shattering it and at the same time vaporizing the ice block with all the high temperature. Not even a sound was made, and everyone could see clearly that the ice cubes shattered and evaporated, and even the mist did not exist for more than a few seconds. Chapter 66 The three legendary blood shadows take action, the two emperors are afraid, and the world cheers. It's been evaporated. Such a huge ice cube. It's the blood shadow. That's the Akainu blood shadow. On the pirate side, the captains were very surprised to see that Josie's big ice block was easily destroyed. But Akainu blood shadow's offensive is far from that simple. In line with the rules of courtesy, Xia En directly asked Blood Shadow to add a big move. Meteor Volcano. It's not as simple as Akainu's falling volcanic rocks, but a real killing move. The hugely expanded magma fist still maintained its striking posture, but the next moment, the entire magma fist broke away and flew into the sky like a rocket. And there was more than one. The Akainu blood shadow fired one magma fist after another into the sky, reflecting half of the sky in orange. Attention everyone. Whitebeard, Redhead, Beckman and others suddenly changed their expressions. They could see that Xia En, who was standing on the edge of the platform, was commanding the blood shadow. The moves he used were definitely not simple, and they felt a vague threat. Sure enough, just a few seconds later, one after another, magma bombs dragged meteor-like trails towards the ice surface of the inner bay, falling randomly, covering an extremely wide area. Boom! As the first meteor volcano exploded on the ice and smashed through the ice, a terrifying scene appeared. A large number of pirates were bombed, splashed, burned, and impacted, all injured and wailing. Whitebeard couldn't bear it any longer. He stood on the bow of the ship and punched him with his backhand to stop the falling lava meteor from hitting the crowd. Shanks is also helpless. Xia En's blood shadow can really use moves without any scruples and is not afraid of consuming physical energy. This move alone forced him to wave his sword to stop meteor volcano from falling. One after another, Shanks and Whitebeard stopped all the meteors and magma, except those that would not hit ships and people, and kept their eyes on Xia En solemnly. Seeing the turmoil of the pirates on the battlefield, Sengoku was not disappointed because the obstruction did not work too much, and the corner of his mouth curled up in an indistinct manner. This has just begun. Whitebeard and Redhead are about to face Blood Shadow's moves in person. This is a good thing. Consuming their physical strength is an advantage in itself. In the live broadcast screen, the audience immediately cheered when they saw this. Everyone was very happy, because Marine was obviously better at this time, and the magma that was like a natural disaster shocked everyone. It's the Blood Shadow. The shadow of Akainu Admiral. This is the strength of Xia En Admiral. The control shadow shows the strength of an admiral. No, not one, but three. Starting from Aokiji and Kizaru, the blood shadows of three admirals have already taken action. Too strong. Blood Shadow Admiral. The pirates were caught off guard and were in a panic, and the people who supported Marine cheered endlessly after being shocked by the scene. On sight, the morale of the Marine soldiers increased greatly after seeing the ferocity of Zuying's attack. Come on. Defeat these pirates. The four emperors teamed up, but they were not as powerful as they thought. Xia En was enough to suppress the opponent's combat power. Whitebeard and Shanks blocked the meteor volcano that fell to the pirate ship, and their expressions were a little ugly. Marine's main force hasn't taken action yet, and Xia En alone is so difficult to deal with. Shanks couldn't help but set his sights on Xia En. As long as he is dealt with, Blood Shadow will naturally lose its due fighting power. At this time, Usopp stood up and aimed the musket at the execution platform. He is a marksman. Observation hockey is so powerful that even Shanks may not be sure to win, and his shooting is even more sharp. Almost no one in the entire sea can surpass Usopp's shooting skills. So when the scope was aimed at Xia En, the eyes of senior executives such as Kizaru, Aokiji, Akainu and Sengoku suddenly changed. Usopp is going to take action. Kizaru was afraid that Xia En would stand on the edge of the platform, but Usopp really succeeded. His sniper attack may not be able to be intercepted 100% even if it is on the path. But Xia En smiled indifferently. It's okay, as long as they don't get close to me, they will do nothing. In fact, when Usopp locked in, Xia En felt a chill in her eyebrows. Then, the muzzle of Weebu's gun burst into flames. A bullet made of seastone was wrapped around armament hockey. Under the guidance of the sighted aim, it shot directly into Xia En's head. The rotating bullet can even drag out arc-shaped airflow, and it is very fast. This is already faster than the burst of sniper rifle bullets that Xia En is familiar with. Then, let's start a full-scale war. Xia En remained motionless, looking at the battlefield calmly. Behind him, two bloody figures disappeared instantly. When it reappeared, the Golden Lion blood shadow had already flown into the path of the bullet. Countless sand and dust in the ground condensed with the movement of Zuying's palm, forming a gray spear-like weapon. Immediately, the Golden Lion blood shadow pointed it at the menacing armed bullets and threw it out. In a millisecond, the bullet collided with the gray dust. As one might imagine, the spear condensed by Golden Lion blood shadow using lion fruit did not withstand the bullet, but turned into dust and dispersed at the moment of contact. At the same time, the bullet never broke out of the dust range. What's going on? Usopp's marksman's bullet has stopped moving. Hancock, Moria and the other Shichibukai were directly below, looking up and saying in surprise. Doflamingo, on the other hand, frowned and looked a little unhappy, cursing in his mind. He was defeated by Shaen so easily. He had been hoping that the pirates would teach Shaen a lesson. The result was a sniper attack that was louder than thunder. But at this time, Usopp's expression was heavy, and Shanks shook his head. The bullet's hockey was disintegrated, and its ability controlled the bullet. The main purpose of the spear gathered by dust is to use it as a medium, so that the Golden Lion blood shadow can directly hang the bullet. Therefore, in the dust, the bullet made no movement and floated there motionless. It's not that easy for us to attack Shaen directly. Shanks was not too surprised. Although Usopp was very accurate, there were very few chances of actually attacking Shaen. This time we also saw the problem. There are too many ways for Shaen to solve ultra-long-range attacks, so she still has to get closer. Looking at the battle on the field again, Marine and the pirates were already fighting on the ice. Vice Admiral of the Titans, Naval Headquarters Vice Admiral also fought against the captain and officers. At this moment, the blood shadow of Sengoku suddenly appeared in the inner bay. After being noticed by Shanks and others, the normal-sized figure burst into a bright golden light, and continued to grow taller, turning into the form of a giant Buddha. It's Sengoku blood shadow. Get out of the way over there. The sudden appearance of the giant Buddha appeared very close to the pirates, and the captains immediately shouted for their companions to get out of the way. The huge golden Buddha stood in front of the Marines, and the pressure it brought was too great. Even many people had never seen the ability of the Buddha that they hadn't shot for many years. In an instant, the audience watching the live broadcast exclaimed. Dashes of golden light shrouded the battlefield. Shanks and Whitebeard frowned even deeper. As soon as the battle started, Shaen's sense of oppression was too strong. From Aokiji Blood Shadow's attack to Sengoku Blood Shadow's attack, the combat power was not ordinary. And at this time, the transformed Sengoku Blood Shadow didn't stop, raised his hand and launched it suddenly at the location of Moby Dick and Red Force. Shockwave. The translucent energy fluctuations instantly blasted the ice in front of them, shattering everything along the way, slamming the involved pirates and vomiting blood, and flying backwards with the direction of the impact, and the ones who were closer were thrown flying directly. Shockwave. This is an attack equivalent to that of Martial Marine. The ferocious attack visible to the naked eye made the pirates palpitate. Beckman quickly jumped onto the mast of Red Force, filled the pistol with special bullets in his hand, and then fired at the blaster. ZZZ. Hockey lightning is like a spider web entrenched on the bullet head, spinning, pushing the atmosphere like ripples on the water surface. The bullets fired by a pistol are actually at the range of a cannon, carrying Beckman's strong conquerors and armament hockey. This collision of unequal volumes touched the beginning, like two steel walls colliding, and there was a bang. A big hole exploded in the ice surface, and the air waves rolled away. The shock wave of the Buddha's blood shadow was stopped by a single shot. Blocked. The pirates below breathed a sigh of relief. They were really frightened by the shock wave just now. But at this time, Beckman's expression did not relax at all, but changed with eyes widened. He saw that on the platform where Shaen was, a blood shadow quickly disappeared in place, and sprinted through the air at an unimaginable speed. That's right. Just stepping on the air in the air, you can even see the appearance of the sonic boom barrier. This sound explosion also attracted the attention of most fighting people, because it was really hard to ignore it. After everyone saw it clearly, they found out that it was the blood shadow of the marine hero Garp. It's Garp blood shadow. Whitebeard's eyes moved slightly, but he didn't choose to make a move. I thought to myself that the last time I fought with Shaen was only 3 admirals, but this time the blood shadow he has mastered has 3 legendary combat powers, which is really tricky. But Garp's blood shadow made a move and came straight to the pirate ship, and no one could stop it on the way. For example, Marco, Vista and others were all entangled on the ice by the 3 admiral blood shadows. Even if they saw a slight delay, it was too late to stop them. As for Usopp, Beckman just used hockey to shoot. Even if he did it again, he couldn't stop Garp's blood shadow's charge. At this time, Garp's blood shadow rushed rapidly in the air, and black and red lightning bolts erupted from his body. But at this moment Whitebeard only looked up at the beginning, and then kept his eyes on the battlefield. Flashing all the way, the menacing air enveloped the bottom. This kind of momentum immediately made Garp next to Granny he see what move he was going to use. It's a fist-to-bone impact. Arriving above the pirate ship, Garp blood shadow used a standard punching posture, facing Moby Dick, and the Red Force suddenly blasted out. The impact of the punch radiating from the fist seemed to put a filter on the world. The desperate conqueror's hockey rolled up the wind, making the prelude of the fist impact very suffocating. So powerful hockey. He wants to cover all the ships, including us, and attack. The pirates were quite frightened, including the captains and officers, who couldn't help but look heavy. The offensive is coming. The thick black lightning has taken the lead in blasting on the ice, blasting at 340. A filter-like impact fell in this burst of black lightning. The powerful force of the fist bone impact can destroy all the pirates below, including the pirate ship, with just a tiny bit of power. But it's a time of crisis. Shanks leaps from the red force. The figure in the one-armed cloak looks like a swordsman cutting through the sky, but it actually blocks the impact of the fist fell. And his ultimate conqueror's haki collided with Garp's blood shadow, causing a dizzying haki lightning burst. At the same time, the unsheathed griffin sword was coated with a layer of black. Before it could get close to Garp's blood shadow, Shanks slashed upwards. God avoids. The sound of Conqueror's haki's violent conflict rang in everyone's ears. Wherever you look, a strong wind sweeps and black thunder shines. A black-red slashing sword energy cut through the shroud of fist-bone conflict, and while blocking it, it collided with Garp Blood Shadow's iron fist in the air. Both Conqueror's haki were attacked from a distance, and the terrifying power of the two created a head-on confrontation. In an instant, not only the aftermath of the impact of power enveloped the area below, but Conqueror's haki, which made the weak unable to stand, spread throughout Marineford. At the center of the clash between divine avoidance and fist impact, Ultimate compresses into a ball and explodes with haki's intense thunder and lightning. It can be said that everyone was shocked by the force of the wind. Whether it was the marine soldiers or the pirate crew, everyone was stunned in place when they saw the terrifying power caused by the confrontation between top experts. Forget about fighting. This is the pinnacle. Horrible. The ice under the pirate ship could not withstand this pressure at all, and burst in a circular shape. The pirate ship touched the water and floated, and was shaken by the confrontation between the blood shadows of Shanks and Garp. Finally, the intense resistance is over. The two people's moves consumed each other and they were exhausted. Shanks whizzed and fell onto the intact ice on one side. He looked at the Garp blood shadow that also fell next to Sengoku's blood shadow with a solemn expression. With the blow just now, Shanks can conclude that Shaen's ability, even the legendary level, is 1-to-1, and there is no decline at all. Whitebeard's eyes narrowed, looking straight at Shaen, who was watching the battle on the platform, thinking about how to attack him directly. Because Blood Shadow is so pervert, just his subordinates Sengoku and Garp Blood Shadow are already very troublesome. On Marine's side, when the soldiers saw Zuying going straight for Wonglong and even fighting against the four emperors, Zuying was confident. With Shaen Admiral here, we don't have to worry about the four emperors on the opposite side. Go ahead. Destroy all these pirates. Chapter 67. The Shuangwang All Charge. Legendary Blood Shadow's death-sending style of play. The battle has continued until now. Except for the marine elites on the field, almost all the Blood Shadows are fighting against the two Sea Emperors. The attack of three Admiral Blood Shadows, the Golden Lion Blood Shadow easily blocked the Sharpshooter's haki bullet, the Garp Blood Shadow, and the confrontation between the Sengoku Blood Shadow and Beckman, the Red Hair. The storm on the field was undoubtedly caused by Blood Shadows. The audience in front of the live broadcast was shocked and dumbfounded. This is Blood Shadow. The name of Marine Admiral really deserves it. Shaen's combat power is really terrifying. The ones attacking are all legendary combat power. Hero Garp, Buddha Sengoku. Because of Shaen Admiral, the strength of the two has been reproduced. Sengoku and Garp haven't played for a long time, and everyone was shocked when the horrific battle scene unfolded in front of everyone. In front of the live broadcasting equipment among the major islands, with the attack of Admiral's Blood Shadow, there were waves of uproar. This also made many people who still doubted Shaen's own strength lose their temper. What kind of admiral is this? It's simply a little monster who controls boundless combat power. You must know that what Marineford is facing at this moment is tens of thousands of fierce pirates. And Whitebeard, Redhead, Beckman and other top powerhouses. The subordinates are all legendary, and the two emperors, Whitebeard and Red-haired, are required to start the game. It seems that the pirate side is a bit cramped. However, this is still the shock brought to everyone on the live broadcast. The Marines and pirates on the scene are the ones who truly appreciate how amazing the oppression of the top battle is. The collision between the red-haired Shanks and Garp's Blood Shadow caused the entire Marineford to be swept into the haki wind. Just after a pause, Marine sprinted again on the ice led by the giant Vice Admiral, and the people from the two major pirate fleets also swarmed up as the aftermath passed. The war broke out again. But at this time, the Shichibukai were still immersed in the horror of the Blood Shadow. Hancock glanced back at Shaen, full of astonishment, and let the Blood Shadow directly face the four emperors head-on, exerting its 100% strength. She really didn't understand, how did Shaen manage to control such a terrifying Blood Shadow at such a young age? Doflamingo's face was extremely ugly, looking at a huge hole in the ice that had been blasted. He was silent, and had no intention of doing anything. In the middle section of the execution platform, Kizaru, Akainu, and Aokiji all relaxed, and even smiled. According to this situation, they don't need to make a move at all. Shaen alone can let the Blood Shadow hold back the red-haired and Whitebeard, two major pirate groups. After all, ignoring the consumed Blood Shadows and unleashing a natural disaster-like offensive by raising their hands, who can resist these pirates? But Luffy, who was handcuffed on the execution platform, exclaimed worriedly, "Shanks. What is this? How can it be so strong?" Although nervous, it can be seen that Shanks and Whitebeard were a little passive at the beginning, especially when the blood shadows shot one after another. The pirates were almost meaningless just by taking a meteor volcano. Rayleigh frowned, seeing for the first time the strength of the blood shadow with full firepower, and was very surprised. His blood shadow really doesn't consume at all. Besieged by 3 Admiral blood shadows, but after seeing Garp blood shadows attacking, that kind of performance is as strong as the original owner. Rayleigh can't help but marvel at his heart. No matter who comes today, you cannot be rescued. At this time, Sengoku glanced sideways, seeing Rayleigh's pensive look, and said slowly, "If there is no accident, this war does not even need other admirals to take action. Xia En alone is enough." "Marine, why did this monster appear?" As he spoke, Rayleigh felt confused. If Xia En appeared in the world government, what did they know when they landed on the final island? Can Joey Boy really deal with such a guy? Because the era of great pirates shouldn't have had. Sengoku snorted coldly, and looked at the blood shadow on the battlefield with his hands behind his back. At this time, a huge figure appeared in the outer bay, screaming Ace's name, and wading across the rough sea. The huge warship didn't even reach his waist, so he picked it up on his back and threw it towards the inner bay. Seeing this, Xia En narrowed her eyes, observing the monster that was bigger than ordinary giants. Here comes Little Oz. The two sides are now colliding on the ice in the inner bay. With the addition of Little Ozzy, the giant vice admiral was knocked into the air, and the front of the pirates began to advance. "Ace, I'm here to save you." Little Ozzy had eyes only for the people on the execution platform, even if Whitebeard persuaded him not to charge desperately. "There are blood shadows ahead. Little Ozzy will die if he rushes over like this." Whitebeard took a deep breath, and his eyes locked on Sengoku blood shadow, Garp blood shadow. Their 2 blood shadows are like a gap that pirates cannot cross, guarding under the defensive wall of the inner bay, and will be attacked as long as pirates approach. And in midair, the Golden Lion blood shadow floated there with its arms folded, preventing airborne attacks. In contrast, the 3 blood shadows did not appear to be so imposing in their battles with Beckman, Beasta, Marco and others. It's time. Redhead Shanks has also been scanning the battlefield. Now the pirates on the left and right can't break through, they can only open a small gap, which is useless at all, as far away as the square. The best direction is to move forward in a straight line, and use the powerful combat power of the pirates to tear a bloody path among the elite marines. And at this time, the appearance of Little Ozzy is just in time. Whitebeard also knew that Little Ozzy could not be persuaded to rush over step by step, so he took the opportunity to issue orders directly. "All charge." The loud voice spread across the battlefield, and everyone in the Whitebeard pirates immediately raised their arms and shouted, "Yes. Dad. Brothers. Kill in." And Shanks is also a member of the command of the entire pirate group, charging towards the inner bay of Marineford. Because the gigantic Little Ozzy stepped on the ice, and quickly approached the marine lineup within a few steps. Marco, Vista, Joes, Bramank, the captains of the Whitebeard pirates and the captains of the big ships followed closely behind. On the other side is the relatively small number of red hair pirates, led by Beckman, Usopp, Lakilu and others, sprinting fiercely. Looking at Xia En on the execution platform, the flow of people is like a black spear piercing into the center of the square. They all launched a charge. Akainu Sakazuki couldn't help raising his eyes, his pupils froze. With such a huge number of pirates plus the captains and cadres, and with so many people, there are more than 20 strong hockey. The strong hockey here refers to the level that can pose a threat to Admiral. 3 Admiral will also be washed away by them. Do you want to open a path directly? Little Ozzy is in front. Anyone who makes a shot will get hit twice. Kizaru also saw the intention of Whitebeard and the red-haired Luling to charge. People like Marco and Beckman are not vegetarians. Anyone who attacks Little Oz will definitely be seized by them to focus their fire. And ordinary marine warriors, even the giant vice admiral, can't withstand Little Oz's charge. Garp was ordered not to participate in the war. Although he was also watching the battlefield, he was very confused when he saw the scene. What should I do? Both of his grandsons were about to be executed. He really hoped that these pirates could rush over. But such an obvious offensive was met with artillery fire pouring from the defensive wall. The marine soldiers also understood that the troops they had invested now could not stop such an impact, so they could only retreat in a cold sweat and let the artillery fire consume them first. Black smoke and fire continued to explode from Little Oz's body, but he was not afraid and moved forward without saying a word. All the pirates who followed the charge took action and swept away the marines. Seeing that such a charge was very effective, Sengoku on the execution platform had serious eyes and unconsciously lowered his head to look at the platform where Xia En was. Do you want to work hard? Xia En then gave psychic instructions to the blood shadow. Momosagi's blood shadow behind him, Akainu's blood shadow near the defensive wall, and Garp's blood shadow moved instantly. The Shichibukai originally wanted to take a symbolic action, but in the blink of an eye, they saw 3 red figures gathering together, and they rushed towards the pirate lineup without fear. Are you crazy? He actually let the blood shadow go up and die. Moonlight Moria screamed strangely, very puzzled. At least there are hundreds of people at the front, and most of them are cadres and captains. Even if Garp Blood Shadow rushes over, he will be attacked by everyone. Once the Blood Shadow is destroyed, wouldn't it mean that his arm has been cut off? As a result, Hancock, Doflamingo and others had not yet reacted as soon as they finished speaking. The first demon, Oz, was hit head-on by the Blood Shadow of Garp. Fist Bone. Meteorite. The large-scale punch impact visible to the naked eye, accompanied by strong haki, knocked little Oz flying in an instant. That's right, even the huge body couldn't withstand the terrifying power of Garp's Blood Shadow, so it flew into the air. The huge shadow flew over the heads of the pirates, frightening many of the charging pirates. Even the violent wind in the aftermath knocked over many people in the pirate team. It was very powerful. Before little Oz landed, the pirates rushed out. What does he want to do? Beckman was very puzzled. Why did Xia En only send these 3 blood shadows to rush forward? Following him, he was the first to pounce on the fallen Garp Blood Shadow. Beckman is not only great at shooting, he is also not weak at physical skills. A side kick collided hard with Garp Blood Shadow's fist, and the aura that exploded instantly spread like a wind shield. But Beckman was always inferior to Garp in physical skills, and was knocked back by fists before he could hold on for a few seconds. A few seconds are enough for Lakiru, Usopp and others to complete the siege, and a barrage of bombardment will hit Garp's Blood Shadow. Garp Blood Shadow is Xia En's strongest Blood Shadow at present. Such an attack can cause no serious damage, but its movement is suddenly restricted. On the other side, Akainu's Blood Shadow was like a meteor, his body completely turned into lava and rushed into the crowd. Immediately, the volcano erupted. Pieces of roaring magma bombs scattered in all directions. Many of the crew members of the Whitebeard pirates and Red Hair pirates were hit so hard that they could not stand still. But the next second, Gabu, the leader of the Red Hair pirates, opened his fanged mouth, and a beam-like shock wave went straight to the Blood Shadow of Akainu. Boom! The shock wave under the strong blessing of Haki shook the Blood Shadow, followed closely by Beast's slash, the bullet inserted by Usopp's wife, and the joint attack of several captains of the Beard pirates. Exclamation mark. It can be said to be more terrifying than Garp Blood Shadow. Obviously the pirates are more afraid of Akainu Blood Shadow's ability to clear the screen. At this time, Momosagi's Blood Shadow was slightly weaker, but he followed Akainu's Blood Shadow in. He turned around and used powerful slashes to block many pirates who came to compensate for the damage. However, there are too many pirates and their power is not weak. No matter how powerful Akainu Blood Shadow is, he is still the same as Garp Blood Shadow on the other side. He was beaten back and forth, and some attacks could even be seen causing some damage to the body. Get rid of some now. Lakiru was delighted when he saw this. Maybe he could save Xia En, who made a mistake from 3 major battles. Not that simple. But when they turned around, the expressions of the Whitebeard pirates did not relax at all, but became even more solemn. Okay, Zhao, Xia En's Blood Shadow has the power of resurrection. The 2 known Blood Shadows are Akainu and Momousagi. 27. Marco explained to the Red Hair pirates decisively and quickly. Usopp, Rakiru, Gabu and others suddenly widened their eyes, and they seemed to remember that Xia En's Blood Shadow really seemed to have this ability. It's just that they didn't think about it for a while. They thought it was just a rumor, spreading rumors, but they didn't expect it to be true. In an instant, the pirates besieging Akainu Blood Shadow became even more aggressive. Even if it can be resurrected, can it support so many people? Brothers, while he can't move freely now, kill him. A cadre of Red Hair pirates shouted with an angry look on his face. Beckman also knew about the ability to resurrect, and he was even more surprised by the Garp Blood Shadow in front of him, which was covered in various haki, slashes, and gunfire. If this one can also be resurrected, then the situation will be really bad. But before I could continue to think of anything, suddenly, more magma burst out from the Blood Shadow of Akainu. It was really like a volcanic crater erupting, instantly encompassing all the pirates within the range. The advantage of having more people came to light at this time. Armament Haki and the pirates joined forces, which was enough to block the magma. Marco, Beasta and others also took the opportunity to attack Kai at close range again. Dog Blood Shadow. The 2 sides quickly approached and fought together. On Beckman's side, continuous attacks obviously cannot completely suppress Garp's Blood Shadow. If we can't deal a fatal blow to it, we can't delay it at all. Beckman wanted to take Shanks or Whitebeard by surprise. But the next second, black and red lightning broke out on Garp, avoiding Beckman's blockage. Like a locomotive, it rushed into the group of pirates and came into close contact with Rakiru and many other cadres. Bodies, fighting together brazenly. Chapter 68 Infinite Resurrection makes the cadres terrified. Gellinger. It was Xia En who killed the celestial dragons. Kill these Blood Shadows. Rakiru was punched away by Garp Blood Shadow, but he quickly rolled back and shouted for attack. It is difficult for 2 fists to defeat 4 hands, let alone hundreds of times more people to besiege, even if some of these people are not that strong. But he rushed forward without fear of death and used all kinds of attacks to prevent Garp Blood Shadow from clearing the field directly. For a time, the moves on the battlefield were bombarded frequently, with almost no gaps, and they kept falling on the three blood shadows. At the same time, Garp Blood Shadow, Akainu Blood Shadow, and Shadow suffered damage and also knocked many pirates away directly. This is a 3vn battle. Doflamingo seemed to have seen that Shaen wanted to use the resurrection mechanism to consume the pirate army, but he did not say it out loud. Other Shichibukai looked strange, and viewers watching the live broadcast from all over the world also looked strange, and were even confused by Shaen's operation. Shaen, what is this? The opponent made a comprehensive breakthrough and only allowed 3 blood shadows to be thrown forward. Are you going to die? Even though Blood Shadow is very strong, it can't withstand the attack of so many pirates, right? The Blood Shadow Admiral is only an 8-year-old child after all. It is normal for him to behave recklessly. It seems that Marine is going to lose 3 blood shadows. The underground forces, major royal families and many nobles looked worried, as if the Blood Shadow was their hope, and they suddenly felt depressed when they saw Shaen's reckless behavior. I thought that Zuying was good at fighting, but I couldn't bear to go out and die like this. People everywhere were also in an uproar. They were adults and they still had some eyesight. How could 3 of them face the enemy army during a war? No, Marine executives don't seem to be stopping Shaen's actions. Of course, it is not without discerning people. People from the Sea Transport King, Germa 66 and other families watched the live broadcast and discovered something fishy. Shaen was on the platform under the execution platform. Akainu, Aokiji, and Kizaru behind him not only did not stop him, but instead propped their heads and watched intently. Sengoku, Grandma he didn't even change her expression, her eyes remained the same. The performance of the senior management itself is abnormal. And now on the battlefield, among the pirates on the ice, Garp's blood shadow combined with the blood red color all over his body is like the devil coming to the world. The strong wind whipped up between punches, creating ravines in front of him. The raging hockey made a powerful impact, and many captains could not withstand the power of Garp's blood shadow, and flew straight backwards, smashing onto the ice in a panic. The next second, various attacks 980 flooded Garp's blood shadow again. The powerful armament hockey defended against most of the power. Soon, the blood shadow of Garp, whose cloak had been torn, flew out, keep fighting without death. If this continues, even if we can defeat it, we will lose many people. We can't continue to fight against the blood shadow. The same is true for Akainu blood shadow and Momousagi blood shadow, and Momousagi blood shadow is slightly weaker. They have suffered various injuries, but they are still fierce. All kinds of heavy blows are right in front of you without any hesitation. Gradually, the momentum of the pirates weakened, and even Marco, Bista and others had no better way to deal with the blood shadow of the suicidal attack. The crew members of the Whitebeard pirates and the Red Hair pirates are extremely fearful. Anyone who touches the blood shadow will be mercilessly attacked. Many people have even been beaten away and never come back. Instead, the changes on the battlefield turned into pirates running away one after another, including the officers and captains, whose faces were extremely ugly. Such a scene makes the audience even more confused. What happened? Why do the pirates keep dodging? They miss such a good opportunity to kill them. How can it be so easy to kill? One is Admiral, the other is the shadow of the hero Garp. Even the shadow of Momousagi Vice Admiral is so powerful, the pirates cannot make a fatal blow. Do not understand. The pirates can't stand the suicide attack. Is it Shaen's tactic? Audiences from all over the world saw that the blood shadow was not directly killed by so many people, but it felt strange to avoid it frequently, and speculated that Shaen did it on purpose. Sure enough, it was very effective. The pirates' charge was really blocked by the 3-day relentless attack. Wherever they went, except for Marco, Joes and other captains, as well as Beckman, Lakilu and others, no one could block the attack of Blood Shadow. But at this time, what do Whitebeard and the Redhead want to do? The Marine executives are also watching from the sidelines. Everyone couldn't understand, but they still vaguely felt that Blood Shadow was going to lose. After all, there are too many pirates, and too many strong men, but the 3 blood shadows can't stop them. As expected, the battlefield was completely messed up by the 3 blood shadows, and soon with the cooperation of the cadres, they took the first ACCG opportunity to deal with the weakest Momousagi blood shadow. The captains of the Whitebeard pirates, Blenheim, Lakyo, Izo, Curiel and others gave up on the blood shadow of Akainu, turned around and rushed to where the blood shadow of Momousagi was. Lakyo's meteor hammer is wrapped around armament hockey, and the blood shadow of Momousagi who is turning and cutting across is under the hood. Don't be impulsive. Seeing this, Yizang exclaimed. Blood shadow is completely playing with injuries in exchange for injuries, and Lakyo's actions are too risky. However, Lakyo couldn't stand this kind of aggrieved style of play for a long time, and even directly greeted Yizang, Blenheim and others. Don't worry about me. Kill it. But even though he wanted to take the risk, he was prepared to resist Momosagi's blood shadow, but he still couldn't completely dodge the blood shadow's ultimate move. The blood shadow's sharp sword light slashed across the chain of the meteor hammer, and at the same time as it scraped out a large number of sparks, the sword light pierced Lakyo's abdomen directly with a turn. Asshole. Yizang, Blenheim, and Coulier were already halfway through their moves, and Yizang even shot. What I didn't expect was that Momosagi's Blood Shadow's attack was so tricky, changing from slashing to stabbing, wounding Lakyo in an instant. But at the same time, Lakyo's meteor hammer also hit the head of Momosagi's Blood Shadow fiercely, knocking his body into a crooked position, and bleeding from his head. Red to black blood flowed out. Then, the angry Azang, Blenheim, and Riel's attacks came one after another. Boom. Take Haki's bullet and shoot it into Momosagi Blood Shadow's body at close range. Kuriel's broadsword slashed straight down. Blenheim stepped forward to perform boxing, aiming at the heart of Momosagi's Blood Shadow. But at this moment, the long sword in Blood Shadow's hand was pulled out from Lakyo's body directly, and all the Haki penetrated into the long sword and a new sword light appeared. Blenheim screamed, and after hitting the Blood Shadow, he was slashed by the sword energy and flew out. Blood splatter. At the same time, Momosagi's Blood Shadow was continuously traumatized, and finally couldn't bear it anymore. The wound on his body worsened, and a large amount of black blood gushed out and dried up like a balloon. Momosagi Blood Shadow exchanged 1 for 2, causing serious injuries to the two captains. The audience watching the live broadcast exploded with excitement and trembling eyes. Killed. The Blood Shadow of Momosagi Vice Admiral. Was killed by pirates. It's just that 2 captains were seriously injured and Blood Shadow was killed. Isn't this a big loss? Xia En Admiral is too reckless, let the other Blood Shadows withdraw quickly. Every disadvantage created will frighten the people, because it may become a breakthrough point for the pirates, eventually leading to Marine's defeat. But soon, they discovered that the pirates were avoiding Momosagi's shadow at the call of Marco, Bista and others. Immediately, a shocking scene happened. Momosagi's blood-shadowed skin quickly recovered like a balloon at this moment. This process was so fast that in just a blink of an eye, the blood shadow of Momosagi had already resurrected, picked up the sword at his feet, and continued to kill Izo and the others without saying a word. Resurrection. The blood shadow has actually come back to life. Could it be? How stupid. Xia En Admiral can fight Whitebeard, Kaido, and Big Mom one after another and survive unharmed. How could she send a blood shadow to die? It turns out that she can be resurrected. Blood shadow is not afraid of death, the only ones who are afraid of death are these pirates. It's too powerful. It's really too strong. People who were originally extremely worried finally understood what was going on at this time in shock. Especially those who were looking forward to Marine's victory were ecstatic. Almost at the same time, cheers erupted from all over the world. Immortal blood shadow. At the scene, Gecko Moria was so frightened that he took 2 steps back, his eyes trembling. Xia En's blood shadow is not as good as his zombie. It has the superpower that perfectly replicates the original body. Now that it has the ability to resurrect, what if the 2 royal groups below join forces? I have to say that this shocked him so much that he was very envious of Xia En's ability. Doflamingo heard Moria's shocking exclamation and couldn't help but turn around and said, Xia En is such a brainless person. All the blood shadows on the stage have the ability to resurrect. What? Even Garp's blood shadow is revived. Mihawk, Hancock and even the always calm Tyrant Bear couldn't help but turn around and look at Doflamingo. Apparently, Doflamingo already knew about this. And when I heard what he said, I suddenly felt that every one of the shadows below really had the ability to be resurrected. It's really scary. 3 blood shadows. I'm afraid that the hero Garp alone can struggle with the large army below for a long time and cause serious damage to the pirates. Hancock was filled with fear and finally understood how terrifying Xia En was. Looking back, sure enough, the little figure above crossed his arms and looked at the battlefield calmly, without any fluctuation at all. Whitebeard, Redhead. How should they deal with it now? Mihawk's eyes narrowed slightly, and he couldn't help but think of the red-haired situation. Although he may not take action, it seems that Admiral Xia En, the most terrifying person in the audience, is capable enough alone to stop the 4 emperors from joining forces. If Marshal Sengoku still wants to counterattack, the tens of thousands of pirates below may not be able to withstand it. Of course, Mihawk didn't know what Whitebeard and the red-haired 2 were thinking at the moment. But it's not that Whitebeard and Redhair don't want to go up, it's just that there are only 3 blood shadows, so they can't act rashly. The resurrection of Momosagi's blood shadow revealed the horror of the blood shadow in Xia En's hands, and it also completely ignited the confidence of the Marines, and their morale rose again, which made them very excited. Meanwhile, the 5 elders at Mariajoy sit among the powers. The light on the live broadcast screen shone on their faces, and it can be seen that the Wu stars are very pleased with Xia En. Xia En's ability is indeed very strong, except that it doesn't feed back the strength to the main body, it is almost stronger than the fruit of the name of God. After all, it is not the name of a god, but this is already very pervert. Whitebeard, the red-haired man is forced to be like this, just 3 blood shadows who will be resurrected, this kid is also very strategic. Unfortunately, if the affairs of the Roswald family have nothing to do with him, this kid is enough to be promoted to the Holy Land. It's not certain yet, wait for Gellinger to make sure. Sa Tansheng said to each other, looking at the screen without turning their heads to communicate. In their view, Xia En is indeed rare. Talents who have developed the Blood Shadow Fruit ability to this level at only 8 years old will definitely surpass them in the future. Pity. At this moment, there was a sound of heavy footsteps coming from outside the door. I saw Gellinger directly push the door and broke in. His face was extremely cold, and he seemed to be full of anger in his chest. There as a result, a guard temporarily left the team and clearly saw the cloaked man appearing and entering the auction. Gellinger briefly described the matter, but his tone was very annoyed. Because now, it is basically confirmed that Xia En did it. Cloaked man. The 5 elders looked at each other, then looked at the battlefield on the live broadcast screen, and their expressions suddenly became extremely serious. That's right, although I didn't see him directly, it is basically confirmed that as the commander of the Knights of God, I have the right to act. Geringer smiled solemnly. The cloaked man was only dressed by the blood shadow of Xia En in the entire sea, and Saint Geringer was even sure that it was the one worn by the blood shadow. And being able to appear at the death scene of celestial dragons at that time, including what the previous guard said in a vague perspective. I would rather kill the wrong person than let him go. Xia En did it, and it must not be tolerated. After the 5 elders confirmed it, they blurted it out without hesitation and suddenly became very angry. They felt so relieved just now, but now they want to get rid of Xia En. It's Roger, it's Rocks, it's people like Monkey D. Dragon. No matter how much potential he has, if he can kill the celestial dragons, he must not be allowed to stay. Marineford still needs him on the battlefield now, and the Blood Shadow lineup he has is very strong. The 5 elders turned their heads, their expressions were a little complicated, from admiration to fear as they watched the battle on the live broadcast. Among the 7 blood shadows, there are legends and 3 admirals. It is not so easy to win even the Holy Spirit of Geringer. I'm here to tell you that Xia En killed the celestial dragons, and it's impossible for anyone else to commit the crime, so it's up to me to end his life. Besides, I have already sent people to Marineford. Saint Geringer immediately confidently stated that the Knights of God could handle it. 5 elders glanced at him and nodded. He's going to be sanctioned, but Marineford's war is also important, so it's up to you. Chapter 69 Red-haired Whitebeard ends up in person. 8-year-old Admiral's highlight moment. Even if they wanted to kill Xia En, 5 elders still wanted to squeeze the last of his value. Xia En didn't know that she was exposed by a guard in an assassination. At this moment, he was standing on the edge of the platform, looking down at Whitebeard, who was beaten with a headache, and the red-haired 2 royal groups. Ordinary pirates can't rush through it at all. Even if they pass, what greets them is either the artillery fire of the marine or the attack of other blood shadows. If you want to go all out, you can only clear the Garp blood shadow, Akainu blood shadow and Momousagi blood shadow, or you can only retreat and find other attack routes. The captains also complained endlessly. Dad, this blood shadow is completely immune to death. It is exactly the same as last time, without any weakness. Vista clutched his chest, mouth Kakuzu already had traces of bloodline wiping. Just now, in order to solve these 3 blood shadows, they decided to risk killing one of them and completely destroy one of them. Marco, Beckman and other top captains and cadres joined forces, and all of them were injured before Beckman's Conqueror's Hockey Entanglement attack gave Garp the blood shadow killing blow. When he was about to die, Garp's blood shadow punched and smashed the auxiliary ship of the Whitebeard pirates into pieces, and also hid Vista. Injury. But in a blink of an eye, Garp's blood shadow returned to its original state again under the excited and shocking eyes of the Marines and the terrified eyes of the pirates, and the breath was still bursting. Desperate for life. The number of pirates who died under Blood Shadow's hands is already beyond count. On the other side, the Blood Shadow of Akainu was delayed by the remaining cadres and captains and lost almost hundreds of elites before driving the Blood Shadow into the ice and killing it. Under the immersion of sea water, even the strength of the Admiral level will be annihilated, so that you cannot be resurrected. The pirates were excited, but a frightening scene happened. After Akainu's Blood Shadow was killed underwater, a large piece of melted ice formed steam and rose, and he was directly resurrected in midair. Immediately, a rain of magma fell, bombarding the besieging pirates, screaming and crying, and the large ice surface was directly expanded and melted. At this moment, most of the ice that had been frozen for several meters in the entire inner bay has melted away. Outrageous. Amazing. The sky has thick dark clouds for some reason, like the haze covering the hearts of the pirates, which is suffocating. The 3 resurrected blood shadows are powerful, the pirates are terrified, and the audience is shocked. Whitebeard Newgate and red-haired Shanks could no longer wait for the opportunity and had to do it themselves. Garp blood shadow kills the quartet. Wherever it goes, it is like a whale entering a school of fish. The pirates evaded in a hurry, and those who were too late were all blown away by their fists. They couldn't stop the legendary combat power at all. How could this be? Will our Whitebeard pirates be defeated by the blood shadow blocking the square? A pirate crew member of the Whitebeard pirates stood there with a weapon in hand, looking shocked and bewildered. But then, before he had time to react, a strong gust of wind broke through the uneven surface of the water and rushed straight in. It was the strength of Garp's blood shadow's indiscriminate fist, with the Conqueror's attack in it, and it was unbearable damage for such a minion. At the same time, there were several Whitebeard crew members standing here, and their faces suddenly looked terrified. Back off. Suddenly he shouted loudly. Whitebeard held a naginata, and his figure of more than 8 meters fell from the sky in front of them. Both feet landed on the ground, trampled on the ice under their feet, and slammed in the direction of Garp's blood shadow in one fell swoop. Xia En also saw the actions of Whitebeard and Redhead, so she simply let the blood shadow not dodge, and directly confronted the four emperors. Without any hesitation, Garp turned around and punched Whitebeard in the same direction. Sizzle. In an instant, the extremely violent hockey conflict broke out. The power caused by the fierce conflict of hockey formed an arc, and fierce hockey lightning bursts were fired. Your blood shadow don't want to be presumptuous anymore. Whitebeard's eyes flashed with anger. If the overall situation hadn't allowed him to take action directly, he would have been unable to bear the torture of his men by Garp's blood shadow. He didn't know if Xia En could hear it through the blood shadow, but he still roared. The muscles on his arms surged like a horned dragon. There was a click. The atmosphere breaks, and the cracks spread visible to the naked eye. The rumbling vibrations spread throughout the inner bay and the square. Everyone could feel the ground and the ocean shaking. Looking again, it turned out that it was Whitebeard and Garp blood shadows fighting against each other, and his eyes widened. Doesn't this mean that the marine heroes are fighting against the strongest man in the world? What followed immediately was the crazy aftermath of the collision between the two top powerhouses. The pirates were blown away, and even the marines on the defensive wall of the inner bay were not spared. They all hit the wall and looked at Garp's blood shadow in shock. Even a giant like Little Oz can't stand firmly. It's so scary. Go help Dad. The captains on Marco's side immediately couldn't help but want to go up and help Whitebeard besiege Garp blood shadow. Don't worry. Breakthrough. Whitebeard roared without looking back. It was the wrong choice to besiege this immortal blood shadow at this moment. Taking this opportunity to rush into the square was the right thing to do. These blood shadows are all immortal. Let's attack the square first. Marco also reacted, understood what Whitebeard meant, and quickly took the lead to greet everyone. The aftermath was not over yet, and the marine below and the marine on the square could not withstand the impact of the two conquerors' hockey. It was a good time to break through. This is indeed the case. As soon as the marine stood up, Marco and his men were already approaching and past the Garp blood shadow. And the blood shadow couldn't get rid of Whitebeard's hands, so Xia En simply let them charge at will. Anyway, there are still blood shadows ahead. The confrontation between Whitebeard and Garp blood shadow came to an end. With the support of shock fruit, Garp blood shadow's response was still a little weak and was repelled a little. However, the ice surface under their feet completely exploded in a large area, causing the two of them to they all had to retreat. The vibration that affected the island finally calmed down. It's over. It's so scary, the strongest people in the world facing off against each other. Whether it's marine, pirates or even the audience watching the live broadcast, they were shocked by the power of the two's fight. But soon, before I could take a breath, there was another sudden explosion. A sword light of hundreds of meters flashed past. The stronger hockey added to the sword light, forming a black and red color, streaking across the place where the magma was rolling. I saw that the blood shadow of Akainu, which had always maintained its magma form and forced the pirates to retreat again and again, was separated by a sword. The sword light moved forward without hesitation, even cutting a large hole in the low black clouds in the sky. This sword is very powerful. The scene created was no less than that of Mihawk's only sword, which immediately shocked everyone who thought the aftermath was over. Are you going to be so exaggerated that you actually split the capital of heaven? The one who got hit was the blood shadow of Akainu. Boss, Shanks. The person who took action was the red-haired Shanks. Beckman, Usopp, Rakiru and others immediately breathed a sigh of relief and quickly gathered together. You break through with Marco and the others, leave this to me. Shanks raised his sword with one arm and stared solemnly at the magma that was divided into two halves. Good. Beckman nodded, and without saying a word, he led the people and rushed to Marco's place. As for Momousagi blood shadow, there are other people to control it, so there is no need for them to waste time on it. Now, the two ruthless blood shadows were finally confronted by the four emperors themselves, and the pirate coalition was liberated and quickly followed. And Shanks is very serious, or rather tricky. Immune to death, the blood shadow that is not afraid of consumption. Even if he is stronger than Zuying, he doesn't dare to underestimate him in the slightest. When Xia En saw this scene, she did not immediately stop it. Instead, she raised her eyes and looked at Sengoku and Granny He. If you really want to invade the square, then go ahead. Xia En decided not to let other blood shadows take action, but focused on Whitebeard, the red-haired one. The fighting style of the immortal blood shadow is completely different from that of humans. It was the first time for the red-haired Shanks to face the blood shadow of Akainu. Fortunately, he maintained an absolutely serious attitude in dealing with it. When Beckman and others left in a hurry, the blood shadow of Akainu did not close up immediately, but fell towards Shanks in the form of two giant magma balls. The purpose is simple: get close and fight to the death. Shanks didn't even coat the blade with flames, and let go of haki directly. The Conqueror's haki, which even the vice admirals couldn't stand, distorted the air and suppressed Akainukage's sense of knowledge. The next moment, He dodged almost instantly, came to the top of the two masses of magma, and slashed out with a sword. Another black and red hockey slash. Akainu Blood Shadow's reaction was not slow, he quickly closed his body and punched Dark Hound with his backhand. 0. Asking for flowers. The distance between the two of them is so close at the moment. If Shanks hits it, he will also bear the damage from Dark Hound. Damn it. Even so, Shanks' temper could not help but freeze in his eyes. The immortal Blood Shadow was really cruel. But he couldn't resist Akainu's Blood Shadow move, because he couldn't block it with his sword, so he had to give up the last step and dodge Dark Hound. However, Akainu Blood Shadow didn't want to let Shanks go just like that. His lower body transformed into a flamethrower, and he steadied himself in midair and rushed towards Shanks. But unfortunately, after withdrawing the move, Shanks no longer felt as awkward as before. Griffin blocked the long sword in his hand, and the Dark Hound that extended again hit it. Even Haki, who has surpassed the standard level of 4 emperors, is very powerful, and the Dark Hound is like water hitting the steel plate, completely dispersing. If you're close, you may not have enough skill to handle it. He is not afraid of death, but without his knowledge, Shanks can rely on his body skills to withstand the fierce attack of Akainu's Blood Shadow. But at this time, it was a different scene on Whitebeard's side. First of all, Garp Blood Shadow is far stronger than Akainu Blood Shadow. It is not as clumsy as Garp. It reaches its peak when it strikes. The fist bone impact suddenly exploded against Whitebeard when he sprinted again. The power of the fan-shaped spread directly dispersed most of the low clouds in the sky. Whitebeard was also undaunted. He noticed from the corner of his eye that Marco and his men had walked away. He immediately raised his hand and faced Haki, who was no weaker than Garp's Blood Shadow, to fight against him. 0.00. While he was resisting most of the blow, he raised his other hand and hit him hard. Click. The atmosphere is cracked. The sword energy of the shaking knife spread over, slightly deflecting Garp's Blood Shadow, and the power of the offensive was greatly reduced. It is always a Blood Shadow, even if Tien Pu himself is there. Whitebeard's eyes were fierce, just dragging the Blood Shadow was not his style. A naginata as long as Kong Yunchi played in his hand like a light toy, turning and slashing towards the Blood Shadow. But this time, Garp's Blood Shadow didn't dodge at all. His whole body was covered with black armament Haki, and he fought against him with his fists raised. Go. Boom. The strong wind spread, and the two of them retreated at the first touch, because the ice surface could not withstand the power of the attack, and large pieces fell down. One person and one shadow, there was a tacit understanding of finding a place to stay, and then they started to fight each other again. At this point, perhaps Garp's Blood Shadow is not as fierce as Akainu's Blood Shadow against Red Hair, but it's not that Garp's Blood Shadow is different, but that without a foothold, it can't fight. Sunbird performs life-for-life attacks. Between jumps and confrontations, and the red-haired Shanks and the Blood Shadow of Akainu fighting back and forth in midair, the aftermath and impact caused a large area of ice in the inner bay to completely disappear. Only ice floes are left rippling with the sea water. Marco and Beckman took the lead and began to attack the square. Coupled with Little Oz's huge body to clear the way, it was actually very effective. 3 Admiral did not move, Aokiji Blood Shadow, Kizaru Shadow could not stop them. But at this time, Whitebeard didn't notice that the Sengoku Blood Shadow was not actually involved in the battle of either side, and he could not be distracted now, fighting fiercely with the Garp Blood Shadow. Just like the red-haired side, the frequency and speed of the fights were so fast that everyone was shocked. Too powerful. 4 Emperors, Admiral, Legend. How many people will never see a strong man of this level fight in their lifetime, and only have confrontations with rumors? Especially Shaen. Everyone is shocked now. His Blood Shadow directly dragged the 2 Sea Emperors off the stage, so that they could barely hold back to let others have a breakthrough. Opportunity. What a terrifying ability this is. People all over the world were so nervous that they forgot to speak. At the scene, Whitebeard had sweat on his forehead. Garp Blood Shadow is really difficult to deal with. Whitebeard fought fiercely for more than 10 minutes, but his breath was a little disordered at first. However, the Blood Shadow will not stop without the slightest hesitation. Facing the naginata dropped by Whitebeard again, Garp Blood Shadow still does not dodge. Whitebeard performed a damage-replacing attack, with his fist facing his chest. Snort. Whitebeard had played against Akainu Blood Shadow before, and after playing with Garp Blood Shadow for so long, he would not be reckless in exchanging injuries with him. As soon as the sword turned, it would split Garp's arm, and at the same time deflect his body to relieve the attack on himself. But at this moment, a touch of golden light burst out from nothing to 1,000. Chapter 70 Collect Whitebeard Blood. Is the war about to be won or lost? Whitebeard's eyes were serious, and he didn't need to turn his head to know that it was Sengoku's Blood Shadow attacking him. The huge golden Buddha was pushed out with a palm, and the shock wave instantly tore through the ice and sea water, rushing towards it. This is a war, it's not about fighting alone. Brother's Shadow can also prepare. Xia En looked at this scene, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Everything is under control. Facing the left and right pincers, especially when Garp's Blood Shadow exchanged moves with him, it was impossible for Whitebeard to dodge so easily. Snort. Whitebeard snorted heavily. The burst of strength all over his body made his expression become ferocious. The saber is still going down, but the whole body is visibly vibrating with the naked eye. Accompanied by black thunder, Whitebeard erupts into a terrifying haki. He actually chose to abruptly block the shock wave of the Buddha behind him. Immediately after shouting, he abruptly chopped Garp's blood shadow back, and was enveloped by the shock wave before turning around. The strong impact made Whitebeard grit his teeth, bent down and carried it with impatience. But at this moment, Garp's blood shadow that was split into the air jumped into the air at some point, and fell towards Whitebeard like a shooting star. Whitebeard was resisting the shock wave, and couldn't dodge the attack of Garp's blood shadow for a short time. Even though he turned around and threw a backhand punch, he was also affected by the attacks from two directions, and his eyes widened. With a bang, the air waves rolled past, and everyone in the Whitebeard pirates turned their heads. They were immediately frightened and shouted worriedly, "Dad!" The arc-shaped haki's punch bent Whitebeard's body down, and the tyrannical power was repeated, 4-8 zeros, one after another. Such a huge movement made Shanks notice Whitebeard's plight, and his expression changed drastically. Just about to turn around, but was blocked by endless magma, and could only look into the distance through the raging fire. It is impossible for Akainu's blood shadow to allow him to pass by easily, ignoring the attack again, and using moves to attack Shanks. At this time, Garp's blood shadow, who also gave up all defenses and only attacked, was only a few meters away from Whitebeard. As soon as the shock wave pressure from Sengoku's blood shadow receded, Whitebeard, who immediately had a chance to react, stepped forward, raised his blade and swung it violently. Out! Haki's violent and turbulent sound pierced the sky. Shock Fruit's ability explodes crazily, and the air cracks spread wherever the blade passes. Haki on Garp's blood shadow also couldn't withstand Whitebeard's fierce knife. It looked as if it was completely wrapped by the shock, and the lower body was directly cut open, blood water poured out of the body, and it was suspended strangely. But this blow didn't make Garp's blood shadow die directly, and the attack with Conqueror's entanglement also broke through Whitebeard's surface at this moment because of this knife attack, hitting his chest right in the middle. Puff! Whitebeard couldn't bear it anymore. He fended off the attacks of two legends one after another, and was punched firmly by Garp's blood shadow, and a mouthful of blood spurted out immediately. In an instant, the blood shadow of Kizaru, who was waiting for an opportunity, seemed to have been in the range where Whitebeard was, and the moment he vomited blood, it turned into light and passed by. The blood that Whitebeard spit out from his injury was swept away without any remaining. Daddy! The members of the Whitebeard pirates noticed this scene and shouted in horror. But at this moment, they have no room to think about other things. Thanks to the blocking of Whitebeard and the red-haired two, the blood shadow of Garp and the blood shadow of Akainu have no chance to stop them. Now they have successfully broken through the past and successfully entered the square under the obstruction of Marine. Scramble into the square. Rescue them. Whitebeard gritted his teeth and stood up again with sharp eyes. The captains had no choice but to know that this opportunity must not be missed, and turned their heads with red eyes to take the lead in rushing into the square to fight. Just let them in like this. Doflamingo suddenly showed an inexplicable smile, and kept watching the show with his arms folded. But Gecko Moria shook his head and smiled strangely. He, it's time to make a move. They were recruited here to deal with the four emperors. Now that the Whitebeard pirates and the Red Hair pirates rushed into the square one after another under their noses, there is no reason to stand on the sidelines. As a result, Moria jumped off the defensive wall first, and a large number of shadow bats flew out of her body, preventing the pirates from approaching the execution platform. Hancock and Tyrant Bear also shot one after another. It's just that the Maverick Shichibukai, except Mahawk and Doflamingo, seem to be posturing after going down, or they are fighting regardless of enemy and friend. That's right, it's Hancock who makes no distinction between friend and foe. Beckman, Marco and other captains and cadres glanced at Tyrant Bear and others. Don't fight them head on. Target the execution platform. Marco yelled. At this moment, there was no troop of giants blocking the front, and no blood shadow of the Golden Lion in midair, so they flew up without hesitation. He wants to rush straight to the execution platform. Three brothers, he is about to go up in front of you. Xia En stood on the platform, looking at Marco, who was almost at the same level as her, and was still flying upwards. The captain of the Whitebeard pirates is really scary. Brother, what do you want to do? Kizaru watched the big Chinyan bird flying up, got up unhurriedly, turned his head and talked to Xia En leisurely. Just now I thought I could touch fish, and the public execution was handed over to Xia En. But the Golden Lion blood shadow was placed, and the Sengoku blood shadow did not move. It was obvious that they had to do it themselves. Marco the Phoenix. He's going straight to the execution platform. The surrounding Marines and the audience couldn't help but exclaim when they saw this. Although Marshal Sengoku is there above, if Marco is successfully allowed to go up and fight with his hands, the execution platform will not be able to withstand the battle and collapse. At that time, the rescue of the pirates will become easier. The most important thing is, if the threat is allowed to go to the execution platform, what will be the face of Marine? There is no public execution. But at the moment, Sengoku above was very calm. Marco's eyes were sharp, and the distance kept pulling in, but at this moment, the light suddenly converged. Kizaru himself appears. I won't let you get away easily, Whitebeard pirates. Kizaru Pelusolino chuckled and kicked down with the familiar speed of light. The powerful light blast power is blasted together with Marco. Before that, Kizaru's blood shadow knocked Marco into the air. At this time, Kizaru can't perform poorly. This kick made Marco fly back with hatred. Well, it seems that it is not enough for you to work alone, we will also exercise our muscles and bones. Akainu didn't look at Kizaru, but got up while talking to Shaen. I'll leave it to you here, those pirates can't get even half a step closer to the execution platform. Aokiji also stood up, staring at Beckman, Lakiru and others who came in from below. The cadres of the Sea Emperor are all very strong. Admiral didn't make a move, and the efforts of Vice Admirals alone were not enough to completely block Beckman and others. So Akainu and Aokiji also made a decisive move. Shaen nodded, keeping her eyes on the battlefield below. There are quite a lot of marine elites on the square. Admiral, Aokiji, Akainu, and Kizaru went off in person and became the strongest fortress, blocking Beckman, Rakiru, Marco, Vista and other captains and cadres. Ahead. Today, neither the son of the dragon nor the evil blood of Roger can escape. Akainu crossed his arms and said coldly to Beckman. The pirates looked heavy when they saw this. 3 admirals were in front, and there was a blood shadow of Aokiji behind them. Before the gap in the inner bay, it was already covered with frost. Fortunately, most of Shaen's blood shadows were outside at this time. Sengoku blood shadows, Garp blood shadows suppressed Whitebeard, and Huang Yuan blood shadows took the opportunity to collect blood. The blood shadow of Momousagi and the blood shadow of Akainu entangled with the red-haired Shanks, dragging him on the broken ice and unable to get rid of it. For some reason, Golden Lion's blood shadow didn't attack directly, it seemed to be vigilant and protecting Shaen. That is to say, Beckman, the royal cadres led by Marco are facing the 3 admiral deities, and the blood shadow of Aokiji blocking the back of the square. Is this trying to catch us all? You think too highly of yourself. We are here, all the cadres. The pirates were not discouraged, they raised their fighting spirit and shouted to fight the marines. Guns and muzzles, abilities hockey crisscross the square, a terrifying scene of war in Japan. The audience in front of the live broadcast screen were all stunned, no matter if they were civilians, the royal family, or the major forces. With such a large-scale war going on up to now, no one is not very shocked. The timid ones couldn't stop trembling, sweating and muttering, this is the real war. Most of the people also swallowed their saliva and looked excited because they saw the strength of the blood shadow. Whitebeard was beaten and vomited blood. The blood shadow is too strong. Split by Whitebeard, he will be resurrected immediately after death, and there is the shadow of the hero Garp, and the shadow of Marshal Sengoku in the distance to support. Whitebeard can't hold it. The red hair was also dragged. The cadres rushed into the square. It must be intentional. Look, the 3 admirals are gone. They can't get close to the execution platform. The public is excited, because at this moment Marine's advantage is constantly expanding. The Whitebeard pirates and the red hair pirates couldn't even get close to Rayleigh, Luffy, and Ace on the execution platform. At this moment, on the screen, what everyone is witnessing is the scene of Marine working together to resist the attack of the pirates. Although it looked evenly matched, Beckman and Akainu battled inextricably. Beckman, who has a very deep level of hockey cultivation, can be as good as Akainu in every move, and he has the style of an emperor of the sea, which confirms the rumors of the red hair pirates' so-called twin emperors. Kizaru fought with Marco and Vista without any pressure. Sparkling Fruit's ability gave Kizaru an absolute speed advantage. Marco and Vista's attacks could hardly hit him. Only the sword energy and green flames passed by Kizaru's afterimage and exploded elsewhere. Among the 3 admirals, Aokiji Kuzan is the hardest, and Usopp, Lakiru, and Gabu are making breakthroughs against him. But they still underestimated Aokiji's strength. As Garp's disciple, Frozen Fruit is only his auxiliary strength, and he has no loss in physical skills. This almost hexagonal fighter makes Usopp helpless, and even Haki's bullets can only be used as a deterrent. As for the rest of the pirate captains, the cadres fought against Marine's vice admirals and rear admirals, and they fought thoroughly. The sky is full of fire, and the effect of Haki is strong, and the sky has long been a strange twisted dark cloud. This kind of battle lasted for a period of time, which made people all over the world startled, but gradually became excited. The pirates are getting more and more exhausted, and Marine's almost crushing attitude makes them keep regressing. Great. Thanks to Shaen Admiral. Great. Just keep fighting and end it. The blood shadow blocked the 2 4 emperors, the other pirates have no main force, and they will lose soon. The whole world is cheering, and many people are already celebrating that Marine has an absolute advantage. The battle situation is too obvious. Whether it is the pirates who invaded the square, Whitebeard, or the red-haired one, the disadvantage is gradually increasing without all the blood shadows taking action. Isn't this a win? And all this is because of Shaen, Blood Shadow Admiral. It was the 3 blood shadows who rushed into the pirate group to fight for their lives, forcing Whitebeard and the 2 red-haired emperors to end the battle in person. It was the blood shadow that beat Whitebeard until he vomited blood, which further weakened the vigor of the pirates. Step by step, the battle with its current advantages has been built, and the strength of the blood shadow has completely let people all over the world see its horror. Blood Shadow Admiral, one person can block the 4 emperors. Shaen's name became louder and louder as War 5.7 progressed. They forgot Shaen's age and childish face. The image of Shaen in everyone's mind became taller and taller. The Shichibukai at the scene looked at the blood shadow of Aokiji who released the freezing power not far away, and they didn't even shoot at all, looking at the scene in front of them in amazement. How long has it taken for him to actually progress to this level? An 8-year-old child with such a powerful ability can still control the direction of the war. Is he a born leader? Doflamingo has to admit that Shaen is becoming more and more pervert. Seeing the battle below that blocked the pirates from crossing the Thunder Pool, Sengoku was also very satisfied, and immediately turned his attention to the battle between Garp Blood Shadow and Whitebeard. It can be seen that Whitebeard is no longer fighting so hard at this time, and is still struggling to fight against Garp's Blood Shadow. The red hair in the sea of magma and fire is even more afraid to leave, especially Akainu Blood Shadow, a weakling from immune to death, who is too powerful for the pirate alliance. Without the red hair, Whitebeard, it is only a matter of time before we defeat the pirates below. Sengoku smiled happily at Shaen on the platform, then looked at Rayleigh and said slowly. Luffy and Ace were extremely worried and couldn't hear Sengoku's words at all, and looked at the person they cared about with trembling eyes. Rayleigh was even more silent, his expression extremely ugly. He didn't care if he could be rescued, but he really didn't want to see the people who fought for him die. What's more surprising to him is, who is Shaen and why does she have such outrageous abilities? Whitebeard, the 2 red-haired people are among the strongest in the world, but they were dragged down by him and even injured. Chapter 71 The Revolutionary Army Attacks. The battle between Dragon and Garp. The whole audience protects Shaen. About there. Looking at the battlefield below, Shaen thought that the current level is enough for the whole world to see her own strength clearly. Blood Shadow's current performance on the battlefield, rivaling the 4 emperors, and the 3 emperors fighting among thousands of troops. These are all Shaen deliberately showed for everyone to see. Otherwise, the Blood Shadow would have sent out a suicidal attack long ago to resolve the entire battle. The reason for doing this is precisely to announce the establishment of the Wireless Guild in the live broadcast to the whole world, so as to completely open up its popularity in the sea. Thinking about it, Shaen, who organizes the language, is about to take out the amplifying phone bug that he carries on his body, and surprise the whole world. Suddenly, someone exclaimed, the ground is cracked. A sudden change occurred in the center of the square, and a mountain bump grew directly on the ground, and it broke open immediately. All the Marines were taken aback, and retreated quickly while exclaiming. What I saw coming out of the ground turned out to be soldiers in the uniform of the Revolutionary Army one after another. Revolutionary Army. Shaen was also a little surprised, they actually hid so well that they got here from the ground without being discovered. It's the 4 Marines of the Revolutionary Army. Did they bring the strength of the entire Revolutionary Army? The Marines widened their eyes and said in disbelief. At this critical juncture of the decisive battle with the pirates, why did the Sergeant Major of the Revolutionary Army bring people here? They teamed up with Whitebeard too. Sengoku, Grandma Crane, Akainu, Kizaru, Aokiji and other high-level executives also changed their faces drastically. This came out at the right time, the pirates entered the square and fought fiercely, and they were about to lose in a blink of an eye, but now. Sengoku had to suspect that the Revolutionary Army came at this time on purpose. Because in this case, the combat power on the battlefield will be divided, and the people of the Revolutionary Army and the 2 pirate groups will indeed have a very good chance to break through the execution platform. The audience all over the world watching the live broadcast was in an uproar, all of them looked extremely shocked. The 4 Marine sergeants of the Revolutionary Army, a large number of Revolutionary Army cadres, and soldiers poured out of the tunnel. This is exactly the path opened by Sergeant Major Mori of the Western Army's O2 push fruit ability. But it's not very strange when you think about it carefully. Long as the leader of the Revolutionary Army. It's no secret now. His son, Monkey D. Luffy, was tied to the execution platform. It's normal for him to bring people to rescue him. It's not that Sengoku didn't expect that the Revolutionary Army would recruit people from all over the world, but he didn't expect them to appear in such a way at this time. Bastard. Garp suddenly felt bad, and couldn't help cursing secretly. Don't even think about it, dragons are coming, and Garp doesn't know it yet. The Revolutionary Army gushing out is no nonsense. First, these soldiers stepped forward to join the pirate lineup and attacked Marine. Then, Sabo, the chief of the general staff, and Monkey D. Dragon, the leader, also appear from it. Luffy stared blankly at the dragon and Sabo who broke out from the ground below, and didn't understand why they looked at him with such eyes. But soon, Sabo, except for Sergeant Major Betty of the Eastern Army, all the Revolutionary Army cadres and above, went directly to kill Xia En on the platform without saying a word. Especially Monkey D. Dragon, flying straight up against the wind, Udemons and Lee are even faster. Their first target is Shaen. Brothers, kill, go over there. The pirates were not surprised, but their morale was high. They shouted and charged, and wrote that the soldiers of the Revolutionary Army fought with Marine together. This is a tactic that the three parties have discussed in advance. The cadres of the Revolutionary Army capture the thief first and capture the king first. Kizaru, Akainu, Aokiji saw something bad, especially after the monkey dragon appeared in person. They looked surprised, and they were even more frightened when they saw him go straight to Xia En. They want to sneak attack Xia En. They all know that Xia En's blood shadow is strong, but her own strength is not that exaggerated. Now Garp, Sengoku, Momousagi, Akainu, Aokiji, and Kizaru are all outside. Once Xia En is approached by Monkey D. Dragon, the consequences will be disastrous. But after fighting for a long time, the three admirals who had long been entangled with the Whitebeard pirates and Red Hair pirates couldn't support Xia En in the first place. Asshole. Angrily, Kizaru kicked Marco away, just about to rush to save his brother. As a result, a bullet-carrying Haki breaks the elemental's body and is forced to stop moving. Neither of you even think about going. Usopp set up his long gun, turned on the sniper mode, and grinned sarcastically. As long as the people in the field give up their opponents and want to rush over, he will shoot bullets with strong Haki without hesitation. Monkey D flew very quickly, and just as Kizaru and the others were moving, he could already see Xia En's small body standing on the edge of the platform. Although he only looked like an 8-year-old child, Long didn't hold back at all. He knew that Xia En was not an ordinary child. Arguably, the greatest child ever. Xia En was very surprised. 2 seconds ago, she was thinking that she was going to declare the world and create an infinite guild by herself. 2 seconds later, such an accident happened. And the Revolutionary Army also attacked themselves in the first place, instead of saving people. However, Xia En didn't panic, and her slightly shocked face quickly regained her composure. Monkey D. Dragon thought that he could injure Xia En even if he couldn't completely succeed, so he raised his hand to make a move from the air. Audiences all over the world exclaimed at this moment. Sengoku even jumped directly to save Xia En. Garp looked impatient and tangled. But at this moment, a yellow sword chi slashed down vertically. The sharp blade, fierce Haki made Monkey dodge and also want to get close to Chonjin. But what greeted him was more sword energy slashing down, blocking all his chances to sneak attack Xia En. Lion. 1000/Valley. Xia En smiled slightly. It was the Golden Lion blood shadow who made the shot. I am not stupid. Since I was taken away by Kizaru's blood shadow, how could I make this mistake again? The Golden Lion blood shadow has been staying in the air since just now, even if it is dealing with the red hair. Whitebeard has no remote support, just to protect himself. It is precisely because of the Golden Lion blood shadow that Monkey has no choice but to push away a little in midair, fearfully looking at the taller Golden Lion blood shadow and Sengoku on the execution platform. At this time, the 3 sergeant majors also came one after another, but with the buffer of time, Kizaru finally had the opportunity to come over to protect Xia En, and angrily stopped the sergeant majors of the Southern Army and the Northern Army. As for Sergeant Mori of the Western Army, he was blocked by another beam of light and fell back to the ground. Kizaru Blood Shadow, who had already rushed back when the Revolutionary Army attacked, happened to be here too. It didn't work this time. The difficulty of attacking Xia En immediately increased dozens of times. Monkey D. Dragon's face is very ugly. They all attacked without saying a word. Who would have thought that even he could be easily stopped by the Golden Lion Blood Shadow? But once you start, there is no reason to stop easily. The tornado stirred up strong winds, vowing to drag Xia En into the attack range. But then, without knowing when, the 10 major groups hit Monkey D. Dragon with the seawater hiding on the lower floor. The Golden Lion Blood Shadow even dived, rushing towards Monkey D. Dragon like an arrow. At the same time, Xia En decisively let Momousagi Blood Shadow, Akainu Blood Shadow, Garp Blood Shadow, etc. all start to return to defense. Even though the Revolutionary Army was stopped at this time, Xia En knew that she was in the same position as the execution platform. If they couldn't take her down, they would probably choose to grab the 3 prisoners on it directly. Therefore, the situation on the execution platform is even more urgent. Xia En still has things to announce about the Infinite Guild, so the Revolutionary Army and the pirates must not be allowed to succeed. Boom. 10 meters in front of the execution platform, violent fluctuations occurred in midair and on the ground. Especially the Northern Army Sergeant Major Crow, who is very powerful and can even fight on a par with Kizaru. Encouraged by the abilities of Betty of the Eastern Army, the strength of the other pirates and Revolutionary Army soldiers increased dramatically, which was equivalent to adding a buff to the entire team and increasing their strength. Although the captains and cadres such as Beckman, Rakiru, Marco, Beasta, and Josie could not stop Kizaru, Akainu and Aokiji still entangled him and pressed forward step by step. For a time, cold air and magma raged, and waves of Haki's fluctuations shook the surroundings. Soon, other blood shadows came to join the battle, and they completely blocked this wave of attacks from the pirates and the Revolutionary Army. The monkey dragon was restrained by the Golden Lion's blood shadow and had no chance to get closer to Xia En, with some helplessness in his eyes. With the 7 blood shadows returning to defense, Kizaru also returned to Xia En's side to guard him personally, and said with lingering fear, "Are you okay?" It's okay, brother. It seems that the Revolutionary Army, the Whitebeard pirates, and the Red Hair pirates have already discussed their alliance. Their goal is the execution platform. Whether they attack me or choose to save people, they must not be allowed to get close. Xia En glanced at Whitebeard and then said seriously. They will no longer have the opportunity to be near you, near the execution platform. Akainu Sakazuki and Aokiji Kuzan also chose to return to Xia En to protect him. They said solemnly after hearing this. Blood Shadow quickly returned to defense, and the three of them were guarding Xia En. If someone rushed over and hurt Xia En, it would be really unworthy of becoming Marine's highest combat power. After withstanding the surprise attack by the Revolutionary Army, the situation did improve. 7 Blood Shadows joined the battle, among which Garp Blood Shadow, Akainu Blood Shadow, and Tiao Riang still looked desperate. The Golden Lion's Blood Shadow hangs in the air, attacking from time to time, but does not move forward to attack, and is always on guard against the Monkey Dragon. Indeed, Long never gave up his attack on Xia En, and even gave up facing Sengoku on the top of the execution platform to save people. After Beckman, Marco, the pirate cadres and the sergeant major faced off against the 7 Blood Shadows and Marine, he chose to take action again. Because at this moment, no one can hit faster and more confidently than him. Even if there are 3 admirals guarding Xia En, he is not afraid and is confident that he can hurt Xia En. The next second, the Monkey Dragon, which rolled up the airflow out of thin air to form a violent wind, instantly cleared away the Marine soldiers besieging it, stood in the eye of the wind and rushed towards Xia En. This is his second attack. The wind is like a drill, and the 3 admirals' attacks will also be involved in it, giving him a short opportunity to attack Xia En. The sizzling black thunder and lightning is even more bluffing, it looks so powerful. Audiences all over the world watched this scene with fear, because at this time, in addition to the earth-shattering battle below, there was also the Monkey Dragon, whose momentum was terrifying to death. Xia En's eyes narrowed, the admiral-level combat power was not safe against the dragon, and he was about to let the Golden Lion Blood Shadow directly suppress it. The result is at this time. A figure rises from the ground. The Iron Fist roared out, and even more terrifying hockey lightning burst out. During the 960 explosion, you can see Garp baring his teeth and punching brazenly. This punch broke the wind barrier, and a terrifying impact erupted directly from the air. The hockey on both sides collided, and some people below even collapsed to the ground. This is the battle between the top conquerors hockey. Old man, you, those who can do this, except. Apart from the Blood Shadows of Sengoku and Xia En, the only one present was Garp. Monkey Dragon was surprised and never expected that Garp would stop him. Sengoku, Xia En, the 3 admirals and Granny He were all a little surprised. Garp had promised before that he would not participate in the war. I am also a member of the Righteous Marines. In a sentence that resounded throughout the audience, Garp's Iron Fist still gained the upper hand and smashed Monkey Me out. After attacking his son personally, Garp did not hold back. He succeeded with one blow and immediately rushed over to pursue him. There was absolutely no chance for the dragon to continue to cause trouble to Xia En. Why? Monkey Long was puzzled as to why his father would help with the public execution. One of the people above is a grandson. You shouldn't have come, let alone disrupted the public execution and attacked Xia En. Garp spoke righteously, his eyes flashed with hesitation and then became more determined. Luffy, Ace will both die. Long gritted his teeth tightly, but showed no temper when facing Garp. Although he didn't know why, he knew what kind of person Garp was. Garp didn't say anything, and firmly blocked the dragon aside. He won't say that the world government will guarantee Luffy Ace's life, and he won't actually take action. The main purpose is to attract Whitebeard and other forces. This is also the condition that 5 elders exchanged with Garp. It is a show for the whole world to see. Otherwise, why would Garp just stand there and do nothing? Normally, even if the execution time is not on time, Marine will pay attention to the execution time, but no, the only person who must solve the execution is Rayleigh. Xia En, Sengoku and others also know it. At this time, Ace was stunned when he saw Garp fighting with the dragon, and Rayleigh looked surprised. The sudden change was exposed to the eyes of people all over the world through live broadcast, and it also caused huge riots and uproar. No one expected that the Revolutionary Army would actually arrive for this public execution. What's even more shocking is that after the attack on Xia En happened, 3 Admiral, the 7 Blood Shadows actually chose to return to defense so quickly, even ignoring the battlefield below to protect Xia En, and even the hero Garp took action himself. The importance of Blood Shadow Admiral is self-evident. Chapter 72. The world is in a panic, and the 3 parties are afraid of Xia En, and they jointly ask for her release. What's going on? The Revolutionary Army is here too. The 4 major sergeants, so many cadres, they are all here. No, how can the pirates and the Revolutionary Army cooperate with each other to deal with Marine? The evil organization is also colluding with the pirates. The people of the Alliance were in an uproar and looked nervous. The double regiment plus the Revolutionary Army, this lineup is really terrifying. If it weren't for the presence of the Blood Shadow Admiral, I am afraid that the 3 parties would have successfully rescued people at this time. Moreover, Marine is very strong, has blood shadows, soldiers of all levels, and tens of thousands of elites in the square, but now the people are also frightened. Especially after the attack on Xia En failed, the Revolutionary Army and pirates began to readjust and join forces to attack. On Marine's side, there are 3 admirals guarding Xia En on the platform, and Marshal Sengoku guarding the top of the execution platform. However, Garp blocked Monkey D. Dragon but was unable to pursue in depth and had no choice but to retreat. On the battlefield, the 6 Blood Shadows and Vice Admirals of all levels led the elites to fight. Especially after the Revolutionary Army gave up the attack on Xia En, they joined forces with the pirates to form a rope. The Red Hair Pirates have powerful leaders such as Beckman, Rakiru, Usopp, and Gabu. The Whitebeard Pirates have captains such as Marco, Beasta, and Josie. The Revolutionary Army has Sabo, the 4 major sergeants, and Monkey Dragon. Coupled with the inspired pirates and revolutionary soldiers, their combat power is so huge that it shocks the world. Under the execution platform, the balance of victory began to tilt slowly. Although there are 3 Blood Shadows in the Blood Shadows, Akainu, Garp, and Momousagi, they are not afraid of death and go on a rampage. In front of a group of pirate cadres with haki, the captains are still a little stretched. They are not afraid of death and will be limited to a certain range, and they can only continue to cause destruction. The remaining people from the 3 parties have full space to unleash their strength and wreak havoc on the battlefield. The 4 commanders of the Revolutionary Army have completely unleashed their astonishing strength. All of them are close to the admiral level. The strongest crow is even admiral level. The immortal Momousagi Blood Shadow is entangled by the crows of the sergeant major. Every suicidal attack will be avoided by his scattered flocks of crows and can be counterattacked with ease. His coal fruit ability actually restrained Momosagi's Blood Shadow. It's really scary. The 3 parties are joining forces. Kizaru stood next to Xia En and said with admiration. Beckman, Marco and other cadres and captains joined forces and were fighting fiercely with Kizaru Blood Shadow and Sengoku Blood Shadow. The golden light spread one after another, which showed that Sengoku's legendary strength was considerable. Calendar. The other side, Mori and another sergeant major faced off against the Aokiji Blood Shadow. Thanks to the flexibility of the push fruit, the freezing cold air could not quickly pursue them, and they counterattacked from time to time, a proper guerrilla warfare. But even so, the Blood Shadow was restrained in place. But the most critical thing on the battlefield at this time is Monkey Dragon. Former Admiral, a ferocious dragon dressed in haki, after getting rid of Garp, he was fighting against the Blood Shadow of Akainu alone. The magma is billowing out, but the wind can guide the fire, which just limits the performance of Akainu's Blood Shadow, making it impossible for him to get up close and use powerful moves to die together. It can be said that Marine's high-end combat capabilities have reached a stalemate. Sengoku, San Admiral, and Granny He were all very stressed and frowned. If this continues, our troops will be consumed first. There are too many pirates and revolutionary troops, and the remaining cadres and captains, coupled with the inspiring ability of Sergeant Major East Blue, are simply terrifying in combat effectiveness. Even the pirate minions were able to move forward under gunfire and approach the execution platform. It can be said that the Marines are retreating, and their defensive space is constantly being compressed. Among them, the most terrifying one is Little Oz, a giant demon. Although he cannot move forward quickly, his huge body is unstoppable, especially with his ability to inspire. His eyes are red, and he is extremely powerful. With one strike of the knife, the strong wind whipped up will knock the Marines away, and they will continue to approach the execution platform from the side. If such a huge body is allowed to approach, I am afraid that the execution platform can be dismantled with one hand. Shichibukai, what are you doing? Sengoku is somewhat annoyed. These guys are simply not doing their job properly. Blocking the gap in the square on the front, one of them was not doing anything about red hair pirates, 2 were watching the show, and the others were just showing off. Pirates cannot be trusted. Grandma He was not surprised. She didn't know when she had arrived behind Sengoku, her eyes full of solemnity. Xia En also noticed the pressure from Sengoku and others, but she was not much moved. It's really amazing that they can unite. World government is not a good thing. How about letting you people unite? I'm not afraid that the 5 elders will show their hidden fangs afterwards. But they may not be able to survive today. Garp Blood Shadow should also take action, otherwise he will be threatened with execution. In a flash of thought, Xia En asked Garp Blood Shadow, who had withdrawn to protect herself, to take action again. Judging from the current battle situation, although the Monkey Dragon and other major cadres are in strong momentum, they still have separate troops to put fatal pressure on Marine in the Battle of Blood Shadow. But the situation is not that urgent. The most urgent thing is, Little Oz. The vice admirals of the giant race couldn't resist the Little Oz after being blessed and encouraged. He was knocked away at the first contact. Now that there is no Blood Shadow to join, the speed is slowly increasing, and it won't take long before he can reach out and touch the execution platform. So the next moment, Garp's bloody shadow under the execution platform started to move, running and knocking away a group of revolutionary soldiers and pirates, until Shalizi left. Haki formed a strong wind on the outer layer of his body. Not to mention bullets and artillery fire. Even when Beasta saw this, he drew his sword and slashed, but he was counterattacked by the huge power of Garp's blood shadow, and the impact of running pushed him away. Being immortal and having legendary strength is no joke. Ace saw this scene on the execution platform. He was originally happy that the pirates had the advantage, but now he couldn't help but sink. The scene where Garp blood shadow beat up Whitebeard and vomited blood was witnessed by many people, and it was definitely not something Oz could take on. At this time, Monkey Long, Beckman, Usopp, Josie and others took action one after another, all trying to stop Garp blood shadow. They are very relaxed now and can completely deal with them. As a result, Garp blood shadow raised his hand. Terrifying fluctuations erupt. Fist bone. Meteorite. The strong hockey formed a fist and exploded, and a rapid wave of air directly separated the pirates blocking the way, including the offensive of Monkey Dragon and others. Little Oz, there is nowhere to escape. Never let him get close to the execution platform. This is the order given by Shaen. But that's it. Two figures quickly fell from the sky. Ozzy, slow down. Whitebeard shouted without looking back. Immediately, he landed heavily with his footsteps, and blasted open the cracks in the sky with a backhand punch, colliding with Garp's blood shadow. The 12th level gust-like shock wave lifted the ground and sent everyone around flying out. The black thunder was centered on the two of them, and the fan-shaped low clouds connected upwards. The scene was extremely frightening and shocked countless people's jaws. Little Oz was startled. Just now, he couldn't help but feel frightened when faced with the killing momentum of Garp's blood shadow. He didn't expect that Father Whitebeard actually descended from the sky and saved him. In the middle of the field, the three-party coalition forces breathed a sigh of relief. With Whitebeard making a move, Garp's blood shadow would definitely have a harder time dealing with little Ozzy. The advantage is still on their side. Whitebeard has entered the square. Sengoku and Nao's mother-in-law's expressions changed drastically. From their point of view, whether little Ozzy or the other cadres, the combined threat is not as great as the pressure from a Whitebeard. Whitebeard, who controls the power of earthquakes, is the strongest man. No, there are red hair. The tension of the battle suddenly awakened the other Marines. Whitebeard rushed over to where the ice broke, but where is the Redhead? At this moment, a ray of sword light flew quickly from behind Little Oz and hit the waist of Garp blood shadow. God avoids. The terrifying red and black sword energy is exactly the trick of the red-haired Shanks. Garp blood shadow was unable to react at this moment, and was fighting Whitebeard, and was hit by him in the blink of an eye. The hockey defense around the waist flashed wildly with hockey waves, and then was broken by the god and penetrated deep into the body. At this moment, the blood shadow of Garp could not withstand the joint efforts of Whitebeard and the red-haired man. Half of his body was cut open, and his body flew upside down rapidly and fell on the wall of the fortress. The blood in his waist was flowing freely, and his body shriveled up quickly. But soon, Garp's blood shadow recovered again and stood up again, with no injuries on his body. The Marines breathed a sigh of relief, but their expressions did not look relaxed at all. The battle on Little Oz's side failed. What's important is that even Whitebeard and the two red-haired Sea Emperors broke into the square. Dad and the Redhead are here. Kill, brothers. Marine can't stop us. Ace. The pirates roared excitedly, suddenly bursting with confidence, and launched a more ferocious attack. The whole situation began to quickly tilt towards the pirates' camp, and it became increasingly difficult for the Marines to block it. The audience before the live broadcast was a little panicked, and some even looked horrified, unable to believe what the world would look like after Marine was defeated. If the righteous Marine can't resist the pirates, then the whole world will be in chaos. The era of great pirates will not end, but will become even more rampant. The major kingdoms are also panicking. Without the world government's marine to resist the huge number of pirates like stars all over the world, no island can be immune to the pirates' intrusion and plunder. The whole world will be in chaos. Even the aloof five elders couldn't hold on watching Marine in the live broadcast at the moment, with a gloomy and dignified face. The only one who didn't care was the leader of the Knights of God, Street Gellinger. Whitebeard, the red hair, has also joined the battlefield, but he may not really be a threat to the execution platform. The boy is still very calm so far. Humph, only 6 of his 7 blood shadows are on the battlefield now, and the lion's shadow is still there. Sleepless. Quote. At this moment, his eyes are still locked on Shaen's body, and what he is calculating is also Shaen's blood shadow strength. The 5 elders nodded silently, but don't worry about it being false. This war is very important in front of the whole world. Marine must win. The 3 admirals that Marine can play now, Marshal Sengoku, have not moved yet, but for the current powerful pirate alliance, if they are not slack, they may not be able to come back. After all, the 3 parties join forces, and their combined power is enough to level the previous naval headquarters' power. On the battlefield, the battle has already reached a fever pitch, and it is still the stage of the pirates' comeback. Garp's blood shadow rushed up again, and Whitebeard and the red-haired two teamed up, even if some troubles caused by suicide attacks could be dealt with. The aftermath followed one after another, and its intensity far exceeded the summit war that Shaen knew. As a result, the square is now in a mess, and the Marine and the 3-party coalition forces are clearly separated, gradually turning into a battle to defend the execution platform. The situation of the pirates is very good, but at this moment, the red-haired Shanks is. Move. Immediately facing Sengoku, Xia En shouted. Marshal Sengoku, Xia En, you cannot win this war. Now as long as the person is released, this war is over, and we will not continue to entangle. Elimination of Marine is not a Redhead, the original intention of Whitebeard to join forces, what they want is to save people. And no matter who destroys who, it will be a huge disaster for this world, with great potential risks and many implications. It's better to stop Wang's Zhao at this point and take the opportunity to make a request. The Marines were taken aback when they heard the words, and then they shouted angrily, it's impossible for us to admit defeat. 11. At a time like this, how can there be any reason to let people surrender? The red hair is insulting them. You let people go, and we will leave. Otherwise, you who are at a disadvantage will never be able to stop it. Shanks made such a request, and Whitebeard also agreed, because this is not just as simple as saving Ace and others. He looked directly at where Sengoku was, hoping to reach a certain tacit understanding. Marine's tenacious resistance is far beyond its current strength. If it continues now, there will inevitably be greater sacrifices. If Marine can agree to its request, it may be able to end it early. Even if you three admirals and the marshal end the battle in person, the outcome will be the same. Let me say it again, let Luffy, Ace and Rayleigh go. Today's battle ends here. Monkey D. Dragon's eyes changed slightly, and he immediately shouted no. It can be said that the pirates and the Revolutionary Army are winning at this time. A large group of cadres, members plus dragons, Whitebeard, and Red Hair are enough to destroy Marineford's marine. But the three leaders are still afraid of Xia En. For example, let the three blood shadows commit suicide without thinking, and specifically arrest the weak and kill them. They are not sure how to fully deal with it. Hearing this, Akainu, who was standing on the platform guarding Xia En, refused on the spot, saying sharply, we will never bow to evil. Stop your thoughts, dragon. Saying that, Akainu decided to fight them again. Xia En stood aside thoughtfully, wondering if he should take the opportunity to announce the matter of the wireless guild, then he looked up at where Sengoku was. At this time, Sengoku faced the red hair, Whitebeard, and the dragon and demanded to let them go to end the battle, and there was some hesitation in their gazes from a distance. Marshal Sengoku, don't you want to turn off the live broadcast, and then really? 0.